It all starts when this woman shows up at the Tungton shelter, soaking wet. A little kid by her side, basically begging for a place to crash. The owner takes one look at them and goes, "Sorry, we're full." Helen's been around long enough to know exactly what this greedy bastard actually means by that. So she pulls out a single silver coin and slides it over. And I swear this man's whole personality did 180 on the spot. Suddenly, there's plenty of room. He shows them to their room, says he'll go over the rules and fees tomorrow, and dips. The second they're alone, Helen turns to look at the boy, and just from the way her eyes land on him, you can tell this woman is carrying something absolutely devastating. The kid looks up at her with these big, innocent eyes and asks where his mum and dad are. And Helen knows. She knows exactly what happened to them, and it's bad enough that she physically cannot get the words out. So she does what any exhausted, broken adult does when a kid asks something they're nowhere near ready to answer. She lies, tells him he'll see them soon, that everything's okay and to just go to sleep. The kid believes every word and is out cold within minutes. And then Helen starts coughing. Just a little throat tickle situation. We're talking blood. This woman has been running on absolute fumes this entire journey, held together by sheer willpower. And now that the kid is safe and her body finally lets go. She looks at him one last time, whispers her goodbye, and that's it. Gone, dead in that room before morning even showed up. Rowan wakes up in the middle of the night and immediately knows something is wrong. The sheets are soaked red, and Helen is just still. The shelter owner shows up with his mistress after hearing the commotion, and instead of having literally any normal human reaction to a woman dying in their building, these two are mostly just annoyed about the inconvenience. But then the mistress gets this look on her face. She's staring hard at Rowan, specifically at his light-coloured hair, and goes, doesn't he look just like Pauline? And right on cue, Pauline walks in, same hair, same features. Those two could genuinely pass for mother and son without anyone questioning it for a second. So, this conniving woman hatches a plan on the spot and tells Pauline, "Congratulations, he's your responsibility now. And folks, there is something you should know about this shelter. On paper, it's this wholesome charitable organisation with warm beds for people with nowhere to go. Funded by donations and government money. Very noble, very heartwarming. In reality, straight-up money-squeezing machine that preys on desperate people, especially kids, under the cover of responsibility fees." So Pauline and Rowan, this brand new fake Motherson duo, sent out to beg on the streets every day just to pay for the privilege of sleeping there. Pauline introduces herself and asks the boy his name. He says nothing. He's still mentally back in that room, still seeing those bloody sheets, all trying to process the fact that yet another person in his life has just vanished. Pauline takes one look at his face and gets it immediately, so she sits down next to him and just starts talking. She tells him she doesn't know everything he's been through. The past is behind him now. What matters is what comes next. Stay positive, keep pushing, and happiness will find its way to him eventually. Then she holds out her hand. Rowan takes it without hesitating. He plays the role of her son. They work the streets together. What started as pure survival slowly turned into something completely real. Pauline kept the bullies away, stood between him and every piece of ugliness the streets had to offer, and made sure that even on the absolute worst days, he never felt truly alone. Years fly by just like that. Rowan's 8 now, and the two of them are sitting together one evening, reflecting on everything, the long days, the grind, and how far they'd actually come. Rowan had caught a rumour that morning that had been sitting heavy in his chest all day. He asks her about it, still smiling, trying to play it cool. She nods and tells him how a noble household offered her a real maid position, actual pay, an actual roof, and an actual future. Rowan tells her he's happy for her, that she's going to be amazing, and he means every single word. But even as he's saying it, his eyes are already snitching on him, and before he can do anything about it, the tears are just coming down because it was his parents first, then Helen, and now Pauline. Everyone he's ever loved has left. And even though this time it's for something genuinely good, his heart doesn't really know how to tell the difference between being left and just being left. Pauline sees all of it written across his and pulls him in close. Then she tells him something he's going to carry for the rest of his life. Being alone isn't about who's physically standing next to you. You're only truly alone if your heart feels empty. But as long as you hold on to the people you love, keep their memory alive, and feel how much they cared about you, they never actually leave. Whenever the loneliness starts creeping in, she says, "Just close your eyes, put your hand over your heart, and listen. She'll be right there." Cut to hours later. Pauline's gone, and now our boy is standing alone, deep in the woods at night, putting her words over in his head. So he does exactly what she told him, eyes closed, hand over his heart, just listening. And then something insane happens. Mana starts swirling around him out of nowhere. His eyes are still shut. Suddenly he can see not just the trees in the dark, but everything. Like the whole world just went transparent all at once. And somewhere inside that vision, he feels them. His parents, Helen, Pauline, every single person he ever loved, burning bright and close. They'd been living inside him the whole time, just waiting for him to finally look. So years roll by after Pauline leaves, and Rowan hasn't heard a single word from her. He tells himself she's probably just swamped, adjusting to noble household life. New job, new rules, new everything. He prays she's doing okay and leaves it at that. What else is he supposed to do? In the meantime, he's back to what he knows. Begging solo now, just like every other kid at Tongton. But Rowan, he's good at this. Uncomfortably good. The director noticed pretty early that this kid pulls in more coin than literally anyone else in the operation. So, he gets bumped up to Zone 1 prime real estate. The best foot traffic, and the shelter's version of a corner office. Better spot, better treatment. That's where he meets Blake. Blake runs Zone 1. And the second, he heard about Rowan's background, the dead parents, Helen. All of it, he took the kid under his wing, warm, always showing up at the right moment, and with zero ulterior motive. As far as Rowan can tell, Blake is also the guy who finally put a name to what Rowan had been seeing since that night in the woods. Those swirling clusters of light weren't him losing his mind. They were mana. Well, I'm certain that you guys already know what mana is. So I'm going to skip past the boring details. The scene shifts, and our boy sitting at his usual spot bucket in front of him is doing his thing. Some passers-by tossing coins, and he thanks them with this genuine warmth. Not the fake performative beggar gratitude. The real kind that actually makes people feel good about themselves. A group of ladies walks past and immediately cannot handle how adorable this child is. Coins absolutely rain into that bucket, but Rowan is only half present. The half of his brain is quietly running experiments. He's been working on something, trying to see both the physical world and the mana flowing through it at the same time, like keeping two completely different lenses focused simultaneously. Kind of thing that gives you a headache just thinking about. But today, something clicks. He manages it. Both layers crystal clear at once. He lets himself have exactly one small smile about it because it genuinely was hard. The downside hits immediately. Holding both views at once leaves him dizzy and drained. Baby steps. Blake swings by, clocks the absolutely overflowing bucket, and raises an eyebrow. Rowan deflects with the humble beggar routine. It's really everyone else's generosity, not me. Blake doesn't fully buy it, but appreciates the attitude. He drops a warning before leaving. Success breeds jealousy, so if anything feels off, anything at all, Rowan should come to him immediately. One last wave and he's gone. Here's the thing though. Something has already felt off, and Rowan didn't say a single word about it. Yesterday, he spotted two men in the crowd. Nothing remarkable about how they looked, but their manner, impossibly bright and clean, condensed to the same degree as Blake's, somehow even more so, and they were watching him, and then just vanished, not by walking away, but by jumping clean over buildings, gone between one blink and the next. Rowan turns this over in his head. They didn't feel exactly threatening. They definitely weren't random. He decides to keep both the sighting and his mana vision ability to himself for now. Information is basically the only leverage a homeless 8-year-old has. He's not giving it away for free. His bucket's full. He packs up and heads back to base camp for a replacement. Routine walk. Should be nothing except halfway down the street. He sees them again, not just two this time. Several of them spread out, positioned in the shadows, and this time they're not hanging back. They're moving with him, closing distance, one behind him, one flanking his side, coordinated enough to make it crystal clear this is not a coincidence. Rowan is 8 years old, completely alone, and being tailed by multiple highly capable mana users down a city street. Pulse kicks into overdrive. Thoughts start fragmenting. All he has to do is make it to base camp. Just get there. The entrance is close. He just has to. And then he hears a familiar voice. Blake comes flying in. This man is moving at speeds that have no business being legal. Covering ground, like physics, is more of a loose suggestion to him. He scoops Rowan up without breaking stride, launches off the ground, and suddenly they're on a rooftop. Then the next one, then the next. The men below are keeping up, because of course they are. So Blake cranks it up another gear and shouts at Rowan over the wind to hold on tight and, critically, not drop a single coin because they need to eat tonight. Rowan doesn't respond. Glances down, expecting a completely terrified kid. Instead, Rowan has this totally vacant, thousand-y stare going. Blake figures he's gone catatonic from fear, gets them back to the shelter, sets him down, and talks him through it. You're safe. It's okay. Go inside. Rowan walks inside. Blake watches mildly confused, but Rowan wasn't frozen from fear at all. His brain had just detonated. The entire chase being thrown through the air. Watching Blake move at full power had handed him something absolutely priceless. The first time ever, he could see exactly how mana flows through a human body during movement. Not theoretically, visually. He watched it happen in real time. How condensed mana surges into the legs before a jump. It floods the arms when strength is needed, and how many precise bursts it actually takes to clear a rooftop gap. He counted them. He catalogued every single one. So now, alone and safe inside, he decides to test whether he actually understood what he saw. He breathes in, draws the mana from the air, begins circulating it through his body, feeling where it flows naturally and where it pushes back. Then he starts to condense it, pulling it tight, getting it ready. And folks, little boy wasn't supposed to try any of this yet, but this is how you know he's the real deal. So now that our boy got the basis down, it only makes sense that he's dying to try it out. But before he could do anything, the other beggar kids started trickling back to the shelter, completely clueless about why they got called in. Then Rowan Sr. shows up and basically tells everyone to chill. Nothing serious, just some zone leaders doing an inspection. Go wait in your rooms and stay quiet. But there's one exception, Rowan, him specifically. They tell to pack his bags because he's getting relocated. So, the quiet little dude follows his senior through the shelter, walking a few steps behind like he always does when suddenly his senior stops to have a private conversation with this big guy. Rowan's too far away to hear anything, but then he gets this idea. What if he pushed his mana into his ears? So, he tries it and boom, actually works. Crystal clear audio from across the room, like he just put in AirPods. Turns out they're talking about him. Apparently, he's getting moved out of the dorms and into the main building. Even his own senior has no idea why. His best guess is that the director just likes the kid. And honestly, can you blame him? Dude's apparently pretty good looking for a shelter boy. Plus, after everything that went down in Zone 1, with those sketchy guys tailing him, states it makes sense to keep him somewhere safer. His senior thinks those men might have been from something called the Union. We don't know what that is yet, but the way they said it, it's clearly a big deal. Robert connects the dots immediately. The other guys are following him earlier today. Then the big guy waves Rowan over and they head deeper into the main building until they reach this woman named Amy standing at the front counter. The big guy basically goes, "This is your person now. Say hi." Then dips. Cue the awkward silence. Amy breaks it by asking how old he is. Rowan says 10, then he also just casually drops that he can't read or write and never had the chance to learn. Amy's not even surprised. She just goes, "Yeah, figured you're from the dorms." She tells him starting tomorrow she's teaching him everything, so he can call her teacher or big sister if they're being casual. Then she looks at him properly for the first time and goes, "Damn, you're actually really handsome for a dorm kid. Man, this is unfair." The little kid is ringing up baddies left and right. Rowan, completely unbothered, just asks, "Why do I even need to learn to read?" Amy's a little annoyed. He doesn't already know why he's there, but she explains it. Reading events are basically these fancy gatherings, sometimes hosted by authors, sometimes by nobles, where a kid reads aloud to a crowd of important people. It's a big deal in upper-class circles, and this time, Rowan's going to be performing at one of the shelter's big patron events. If he does well, he might even get picked for a private reading. And private readings, that's basically the fast track to getting adopted. Sponsors pick their favourites that way. For a kid who literally cannot read at all right now, though. Yeah, no pressure. After this whole info dump, Rowan just stands there and bro has no reaction. Amy genuinely doesn't know what to make of him, but she gives him a little pat on the head anyway and tells him to follow her. She shows him his new room and introduces him to the other kids. And when she leaves, Rowan starts unpacking into his very own personal closet, something he's never had in his life. Right then, one of the boys walks up looking at him like he just saw a unicorn, genuinely shocked that this dude came from the dorms, but fascinated too. He introduces himself as Theo and goes down the lineup. The blonde girl is Noah, the middle kid is Hayden, and the quiet girl off to the side is Lily. Theo gives him the welcome speech. No bullying here, no more begging on the streets. The kids in this room handle the library, organising books, helping guests, and keeping things running. And now that Rowan's part of the crew, they're genuinely happy to have him. Later that night, Rowan's lying in bed and his brain just won't shut off. He keeps thinking about books, about how every single thing anyone could ever want to know is probably sitting somewhere in a book. He thinks about Pauline, who always said books were the best thing you could give a curious kid. Thinking about her fills him with this quiet, deep gratitude. Cut to the library, Zone 1. Rowan's been grinding through his reading practice, and Amy tells him to bring over everything he read that day. He drops this massive stack of books on the table. She starts writing down all the titles. Then she stops and looks up every single book on this list is a fairy tale. She tells him to move on to Zone 2, the adult section, and throws in some genuine praise for how fast he's picking this up. Rowan is hyped. Zone 2, adult books. He's practically speedwalking over there. He starts browsing the shelves, and honestly, every book looks interesting. He wants to read all of them immediately, but then one title stops him cold. The Birth of the Grafton Kingdom in the Union. The Union. Of that word before from adults in hushed tones. He opens it up, and the first thing he sees is a full map of the continent. Apparently, a region called Grafton won some massive war a long time ago, and after that, the whole world got restructured. One kingdom, self-governing regions. Then, to make sure no one ever went to war again, the king created this organization called the Union, been running for over 200 years, peacekeepers, the good guys supposedly. So now Rowan's confused. If the Union are the good guys, why did Blake run from them like his life depended on it? His first theory, maybe the Union cracks down on begging and Blake was scared of getting in trouble. But that doesn't track either, because Blake had a totally normal relationship with the local supervisors. Theory is dead. Then a darker thought creeps in. What if the shelter and the Union aren't on good terms? And he's also curious as to why the shelter is keeping the events of that day a secret. So, few days go by, and Rowan's actually settled into his new routine pretty smoothly. His whole routine is basically showing up to the library, doing some light cleaning, and sneakily using mana to make all the physical work a little easier on himself. Now, here's the thing. Back when he was living on the streets, using mana required him to sit completely still like he was meditating for his life. But now dude's casually circulating mana while walking around and reading at the same time. That's a massive glow-up. The only issue is his mana keeps scattering, instead of actually gathering like it's supposed to, which is annoying, but Rowan's not the type to lose sleep over it. One step at a time, then one day all the kids get rounded up in the main hallway. The vice director and Amy are up front, and without any small talk, the vice director starts reading off names for the next reading event. This Theo, Lily and Noah are all in. Cool. But when she hits Rowan's name, she actually pauses because let's be real, this kid just finished the fairy tale section, so putting him in front of important guests feels like a stretch. But then she actually looked at him and thought, okay, yeah, this boy is genuinely too pretty to leave in the back. His face alone would make the event look better, so instead of having him read, she told him he'd just be observing this time. Taking the atmosphere, learn the vibe. The kids who didn't make the cut at all were side-eyeing him hard, muttering about how it was unfair that the new guy who barely finished fairy tales got a spot just because of his face. Come event day, Rowan showed up in his nice clothes and the whole room did a double take. Thick's Theo immediately hit him with a compliment. Rowan returned the favour, and then Amy walked him to his assigned seat. Once everyone was settled, there was a knock at the door, and the VIP guest started filing in, and then one of those guests stopped dead in her tracks. She recognised him. This woman had seen Rowan before, back when he was out on the streets, begging in the cold. Even then she'd been completely taken by how striking he looked for a beggar kid. Rowan recognised her, too, and wasted no time thanking her for the money she'd given him back then. Her name was Caroline, and she was already his #1 fan before she even walked through the door. She immediately started gushing to the vice director, going on about how she'd spotted this beautiful boy at an intersection last winter, and now here he was somehow looking even better than before. And when the vice director casually mentioned that Rowan had also just learned to read, Caroline lost it. She demanded he read something today right now. The vice director tried to explain that he was only there to observe. Caroline was visibly disappointed, but seeing how hyped the guests were getting, the vice director caved and told Rowan to read the last chapter. What happened next, nobody was really prepared for. The second Rowan opened his mouth, the whole room went quiet. His voice had this rhythm to it, smooth, warm, almost hypnotic. The women in the audience were done for, eyes getting watery, lips being bitten, beating a little faster than normal. By the time he finished the passage, the room basically erupted with compliments. Every sweet word you could think of. These women were throwing at him. And Rowan. He stayed humble, Redirected all the credit to the vice director and said none of it would have been possible without her, which made the women love him even more. Caroline immediately said she was coming back tomorrow to hear him read again. The vice director said yes without even blinking. Later that day, Rowan's back in the library doing his thing, browsing shelves, but this time specifically hunting for books about combining mana with physical movement. He's deep in the search when Blake creeps up behind him. Blake glances at the book in Rowan's hands and raises an eyebrow because the book Rowan grabbed is about life's pleasures. Rowan spins around and puts on this whole exaggerated reaction like Blake scared the life out of him. He didn't, though. Rowan had sensed him coming from a mile away. Blake had stopped by to give him props for the reading event. Word had gotten around fast, and Blake was genuinely bummed he missed it. Rosen told him not to sweat it. He knows Blake's out here handling actual responsibilities. Then Rosen asks if there's any update on the union situation. Blake says, yeah, those guys are causing trouble again. He's planning to deal with them alongside the administrators. Rosen immediately tells him he's got full confidence in him. Those union guys are going to get exactly what's coming to them, and honestly, that hit different coming from Rosen. The kid just had that effect on people. Blake felt it. Blake mentions he probably won't make it to tomorrow's reading either, which is a bummer. Rosen tells him not to stress. There'll be plenty more chances. And Rosen says something that catches Blake a little off guard, that he's more worried about Blake's safety than anything else, and to be careful out there. Blake wishes him luck back. Then on his way out, points at the book still in Rosen's hands and tells him he should definitely read that one after the reading sessions, of course. Then he's gone. Rosen stands there alone in the quiet library, just thinking. He's genuinely curious what a fight between two people who've actually mastered mana control would look like. But more than that, he wants to know where he stands right now. What's his actual level? Could he even begin to compare to someone like Blake, running mana through his body just to get a feel for it, and then accidentally rips the book clean in half? The mana surged straight into his grip and cranked his strength way up with zero warning. Rowan looks down at the two halves of the book in his hands and goes, well, that answers that question. So, we cut to Rowan getting summoned to the vice director's office, and the guy walks in with zero clue what's about to happen. The vice director is sitting there clearly struggling to figure out how to even start this conversation, and then it all comes out. Turns out, our boy has completely cooked every other reader into irrelevance. Every single noble woman who's attended one of his sessions now refuses to listen to anyone else. Like these women have been hounding the vice director so hard she's literally growing stress grey hairs in real time. Now she's in the incredibly awkward position of having to sit across from a kid and basically beg him to carry her entire business on his back. Rowan doesn't even flinch, doesn't negotiate, doesn't ask for anything, just looks at her and goes, sure, I'll do it. But then comes the twist. The vice director walks out and makes the big special reader announcement, and everyone's already mentally filling in Rowan's name. She calls Theo instead. The whole room does a hard freeze. Theo himself starts stuttering because he genuinely cannot process that he got picked. The vice director congratulates him and sends him off. And even Theo's sweet, humble Theo pulls Rowan aside before he leaves and goes, bro, your reading is on a completely different level. You're going somewhere incredible. Which is genuinely wholesome, but also kind of just confirms that everybody in the building knows exactly what's happening here. Rowan watches him walk off and feels this little pang in his chest. Not jealousy. More like he's going to miss the guy. But that feeling gets about 30 seconds of airtime before Rowan's right back in the reading room, absolutely demolishing these noble women with his voice again. And speaking of shifts, the vice director pulls him aside again to break the news that he's now on double duty. Morning and afternoon sessions. She clearly feels bad about it. You can see it on her face, but the demand has gotten completely out of hand. Now any other person would start negotiating, or at least complaining a little. Robert sees it as an opportunity. Genuinely feels grateful that people want to hear him that badly. The only thing he asks for is short breaks between sessions, because the emotional output drains him every single time. The vice director, who physically cannot say no to this kid, agrees immediately, just tells him not to wander past the backyard. Robert takes the win and heads outside. The second he gets some peace and quiet, he's straight back to man experiments. He's running through everything he read in that book, starting with focusing mana on specific spots, muscles, joints and bones, and then slowly letting it spread through his whole body like a current. And here's the key thing he's unlocked. Mana doesn't respond to passive thought. It needs a direct command behind it, actual willpower, not just a polite suggestion. When he gets the execution right, his whole body lights up. When it fades, he still keeps hitting this wall with his concentration, and he's not sure yet whether the problem is his technique or something deeper with his body. But he's not rushing it. He'd rather build the foundation right than burn himself out the way he's watched everyone else do. That thought pulls him back to the memory of Blake literally having to carry him to the shelter because his legs gave out completely. But he figures the Union guys probably got sick of chasing him at some point, which is at least one less problem on his plate. But something else has been quietly nagging at him. He's noticed that even people who are actually skilled with mana can drain themselves completely if they push too hard, which gets his brain going. What if there's a way to tap into stored mana? Or, better yet, pull from the ambient mana already floating around in the environment and use it like it's your own, and then it hits him. He's already kind of been doing this. When he channels mana into his voice and projects it outward, that's essentially the same mechanic. If he can figure out how to shape external mana the same way he shapes his own, the ceiling on what he can do is basically gone. That he keeps poking at the theory out in the garden, and then light bulb moment, a single leaf lifts off the ground and just hovers in the air, just floating there, suspended, doing absolutely nothing, and somehow being the most incredible thing Rowan's ever seen. Our boy just invented something. Cut to the next special reader announcement. This time it's Lily. Everyone applauds. The vice director does her usual send-off, a standard routine, except Lily isn't moving. She's standing there completely flustered, staring at Rowan, possibly trying to summon the courage to say literally anything. She starts stuttering, and it becomes very, very obvious this girl is about to confess. But before she can get a single coherent word out, the kids in the room start talking over everything loudly about how baffled they are that Rowan got passed over again. Because at this point, they've all done the math. The man is a cash cow. The vice director knows it, and she's keeping him here on purpose. The whole room explodes in chatter, and Lily's entire moment just gets steamrolled into nothing. Rowan, noticing she said something, turns to her and asks her to repeat it. Lily, who has completely lost her window, just walks away crying. Meanwhile, little Rowan has already mentally moved on because his brain is doing what it always does and sprinting off somewhere else entirely. He's thinking about how every special reader ends up placed with a good family, which means leaving the shelter, new environments, new people, new experiences, and more than anything, more exposure to the world, more chances to learn, more data on mana storage. The curiosity is genuinely eating at him now. The next day at break time, he's back in the garden doing the leaf levitation again, and it's noticeably easier this time. Practice is working. Then, completely out of nowhere, he picks up on a purple mana trail nearby and spots a man trying to slip onto the shelter grounds. Robert recognizes him. It's the big guy who first brought him to the main building way back when, and then the big guy just drops. His mana flickers out like a candle. Another man rushes over immediately, and the two of them start talking in urgent hush voices, but catches just enough to make out one word, Union. Before he can even begin to process what he just witnessed, someone quietly tells him to go back inside, act completely normal, and pretend he saw nothing. Robert walks back in, still half frozen, thinking through what just happened and coming up with absolutely no answers. Then, things get stranger. The afternoon reading session gets cancelled, and all the kids are told to go straight to their rooms. Everyone is confused, wondering what the hell is going on before anyone could figure out anything. Amy came to find our boy and told him to pack his stuff because he's the special reader today. So, we cut back to Rowan getting ready, and already something feels off. I think Amy's entire energy has done a complete 180. That warm, familiar vibe she usually has with him evaporated. She's cold, flat, and serious, and it's putting him on edge in a way he can't quite shake. He's also still turning over those two guys from earlier in his head. The whole Union mention, and his gut is screaming that all of it is connected to why the afternoon session got cancelled without so much as an explanation. He heads out and finds Amy already waiting, dressed up, ready to go, and with zero small talk. She glances at his outfit, and there's this tiny flicker across her face like she almost said something, but then she just tells him to follow her and starts walking. Ron asks if he's being taken to Caroline, which honestly would have been a best-case scenario. Amy doesn't answer, she just walks. Somehow that's worse than a no. They don't go anywhere, he recognizes. Instead, they head towards something called the Annex, a completely separate relief shelter. And the moment Rowan lays eyes on it, his whole body goes stiff. The place is dark, oppressive, and radiating pure bad vibes. And it's not just a feeling either. He can actually sense it. The mana inside that building is wrong. Everyone in there is carrying something heavy, something suspicious. The big guy escorts him in like time is a concern, and Rowan steals one last look at Amy's face before they step through the door, and he immediately senses that something is off, and yep, this place is sus as hell, like no windows, darker than expected. And Rowan makes a quiet decision right then and there. He is not dropping his guard for a single second, and immediately uses his mana sense. Then he hears the vice director's voice somewhere deeper in the building. They walk him into this hall that looks less like a room and more like a ritual altar, and before he can even get a read on the situation, he's told to sit down and read. Rowan clocks the specific book they want him on, and then his eyes drift to the massive pit in the center of the room, this deep dark hole that descends way further down than it has any business doing. He stares at it, and then it hits him. That's not just a pit. That thing is absolutely loaded with mana, more than he's ever felt concentrated in one place. Dark mana, he starts reading anyway. Poetic, atmospheric, the kind of passage that perfectly matches the suffocating energy of the room, and as the words leave his mouth, he can feel it. The dark mana in the pit is responding, gathering and pulling toward him. The emotion slams into him like a wave, uncontrollable, and his whole reading style shifts darker, without him even trying. But then the second thing hits him, and this one is a problem. That the pit isn't feeding him, he's feeding the pit. His mana is getting drained with every single word, his body getting weaker sentence by sentence. He can't stop though, and he knows it. If he stops now, the shelter gets exposed, and the Union moves in. So, he endures it and immediately starts building a plan. Absorb the external mana around him and redirect the flow to protect himself, and it actually works. So, now our boy's in full control. He even feels a little relief wash over him. Now he can keep reading without getting drained and use his mana detection the second any Union members show up. So, he buys time on purpose, dragging the reading out. The people who set this whole thing up are getting antsy though. The ritual should have wrapped by now. They decide someone needs to go check on what's taking so long. Rowan already knows they're coming. But then something completely unexpected happens. Instead of coming toward him, the people burst into the room and go underground, straight into the pit. Rowan watches them disappear below and thinks, what the hell is actually being fed down there? The scene cuts to the housemaster getting slapped clean across the face. The vice director grabs him. The guy running the ritual is furious, convinced they tried to bail on the whole operation. Meanwhile, our boy drops down the pit, and his entire world cracks open right there. Real people were sacrificed for this ritual. Trying to process that horror when he spots a familiar face among them. Pauline, and then the angry guy from before clocks Rowan standing there. At the same time, Blake comes storming in demanding answers. Why are the director and vice director dead? Bastard replies that he killed them because they tried to run. That's when they found a strange fruit on the tree. Rama was brought here to create one more fruit, but the process failed, and nobody knows why. Blake looks frustrated, processing all of it, and then pulls his sword out of Pauline's body. Meanwhile, our boy was standing there completely still like a statue, because now he remembers. He'd asked Blake once he never carried a sword. Blake told him his weapon was being used somewhere else. It is now that this bastard realised what went down and bro lost it, like he went full-on mob psycho, 100% absolute rage. So now that our boy has lost it, he makes the first right decision so far and absolutely murders the guy standing next to him. Be calm, and then he starts walking toward Blake. And this idiot finally realises that he's miscalculated, because this 10-year-old is radiating this terrifying dark aura that makes absolutely no sense for someone his age. Blake didn't even get to finish his little villain monologue before Rowan blitzed him with a speed and force that had no business coming from a child. But then the fight just stops for a second because Rowan's attention snaps to the tree, the dead, horrible, cursed tree. He just starts crying like he absolutely loses it. Then he pushes his own mana into the tree and dives into the memories trapped inside it. And what he sees is brutal, terrified children, helpless people. All of them are gone. And then buried in all that horror, he sees something unexpected, an older version of himself, like a fully grown Ronin staring back at him. Before he can process any of that, the memory sequence cuts off. Ronin's yanked back out, left with more questions than answers. But something shifted inside him. Feels like he reconnected with a woman he thought he'd lost forever. And, riding along with that feeling, is Pauline's voice. He remembered what she had told him about how he's only truly alone when his heart is empty. That, as long as he holds on to the people he loved, they never really leave. That love isn't something you can see, it's something you feel, and even though the memories themselves might fade, the love stays. It lives in his heart permanently, and then just like that, he's back. Blake has a sword pressed to his throat. Smug bastard tells Rowan he was kind enough to wait while the boy had his little emotional moment, and that he always knew Rowan was sharp. His subordinates messed up the original plan. Sure, but now he's curious, so he gives the kid a choice. Did it come with him or die quietly, right here, right now? Ruhan, who's already planned in his head that this bastard is dying, asks where they'd be going. Blake explains there's another farm, another tree. Rin would tend to it. Blake would manage him and officially welcome to the Lutel. Now, if you're wondering what the Lutel is, it's basically a cult run by some fanatic who thinks dark magic is the key to changing the world. Blake is just an errand boy for this guy, a loyal little servant. When Rue asks the question in the coldest possible tone, his eyes completely empty, whether Blake was the one who built the tree. Blake says, no, he doesn't have that kind of power. That's high priest work, he just observes. Anyway, Blake's done talking. He wants an answer, like, bro, did you really need to ask that? You killed the woman who was basically his mom. So, obviously, Ruin hit him with a hard no. And this bastard doesn't waste a single second and goes straight for the kill. And I want you to really sit with this for a second. This is the same man who treated Rowan like a little brother. I personally expected at least a moment of hesitation, but no, he genuinely tried to kill this child without blinking. Except Rowan catches the blade with 2 fingers, using external mana control so precise it makes Blake's brain short-circuit. Then Rowan quietly asks if Blake was the one who killed Pauline. Blake, still somehow being arrogant about this, asks if Rowan wants revenge. That Rowan snaps the sword in half and tells him he won't live to see tomorrow. And look, that line is cold on its own. But it hits different when you remember. This is a grieving 10-year-old who just lost the closest thing he had to a mother. Our boy hits him with a magical sucker punch, and now this bastard is on the ground. Then, without another word, Rowan cuts him in 2. Now that he's finally done, his senses tingle as he picks up a group incoming. Sure enough, a whole squad comes rolling in, ready to sweep the area and presumably judge everything they find. Leading the pack is Oscar, vice-captain of the Union's Faith Division, who spots Rowan immediately and cuts straight to it. Is this kid using telekinesis? Rowan blinks like he just asked something deeply personal. Oscar rephrases, did the Lutel teach him? You know the thing, the magic stuff. Rowan says, no, he figured it out himself. Oscar almost chokes because that is genuinely the most unhinged thing he's ever heard come out of a child's mouth, and he has heard things, but the kid isn't lying. Oscar can tell, which makes it so much worse. They get to talking, and Rowan proceeds to absolutely work Oscar over. He clocks his rank just from his badge. He casually drops knowledge about the Faith Division's recon operations. He shows off his telekinetic abilities, and one of Oscar's subordinates, Osbs, visibly has to collect themselves because they were not prepared for that. One of his men pulls Oscar aside to whisper that the tree was grown less than 2 years ago, and the binding spell has been undone. Though Oscar notes that any high priest would have left mana traces behind unless it was Father Scion. Meanwhile, Rowan is just staring at the tree, at the hose, at lies, quietly marinating in the guilt of not being kinder to them when he had the chance. He asks Oscar how many trees like this he's come across on his missions, essentially asking how deep does this go. How big is this thing? Oscar answers. But he's watching Rowan the whole time because a normal kid in this situation would be losing it. Crying, shaking, completely coming apart at the seams. But this one, he's different. He's focused, controlled, already knows what he wants to do next. Rowan asks to join the Faith Division. Oscar figures the kid is in shock and just incredibly good at hiding it, better than most adults, honestly. He tells him they'll run a special investigation first before anything gets decided and tells him to follow. As Rowan walks away from it all, the tree, the bodies, the whole grim scene, his eye catches something on the dead vice-director's body. A single coin just sitting there, unclaimed. He pockets it without breaking stride. So, we cut to outside the building, and one of Oscar's guys is giving the official damage report, and this is the gist of it. The Faith Division came out totally unscathed. For the body count, 13 dead from the cult side, 3 from the shelter. As for suspects, they've narrowed it down to 2 people, and one of them is apparently Amy. Oh, and the high priests and the big shots of the Lutel group. Turns out they only set up the ritual space. They didn't actually break it. So the investigation's still ongoing because nobody can figure out how the whole thing collapsed in the first place. With the report done, Oscar turns to Rowan and asks where the kid feels most comfortable. Rowan says the library, And because Oscar is actually a decent human being, he's like, all right, library it is, lead the way. In the next scene, both sitting in the library having a proper conversation, Oscar kicks things off by pointing out that even here, surrounded by books, there isn't a single one about mana cultivation. So, he's dying to know how exactly did this kid teach himself magic. Rowan's like, I'm smart, I just figured it out. And seeing the confidence even Oscar, a grown adult professional, had to admit. Yeah, this kid's probably telling the truth, and yeah, he's probably incredibly gifted. Still, logically he needed to hear Rowan's full account of everything that went down. So, Rowan walks him through it all, starting from the very first moment he arrived at the shelter, all the way to his conclusion that Pauline was most likely the one who passed her abilities on to him. Hearing the whole story, Oscar is still sitting there with a ton of questions because nothing about this kid adds up. Like Rowan has 0 mana training. 0. And yet, he managed to kill 2 members of a Lutel organization, one of whom was Blake, skilled swordsman. Not only that, but he also somehow shattered a high priest ritual, which is not something you just stumble into doing. On top of all that, the kid's using telekinesis without saying a single magic word, which apparently isn't normal. To top it all off, he doesn't even look tired. This boy just casually rewrote the rules of magic and didn't even break a sweat. Rowan, meanwhile, is curious about the tree and wants to know what it actually was. Oscar gives him the full breakdown in simple terms. It's a ritual device created by the Lutels specifically to harvest human life. The whole point is to produce a fruit made from condensed life energy, basically solidified mana in physical form, which makes it insanely valuable on the black market. The fruit gets consumed, and whoever eats it gets a straight-up boost to their mana capacity. As for why reading was involved in the ritual, specific conditions have to be met to stabilize the tree and improve the fruit's quality. Reading aloud apparently does exactly that. Robert immediately connects the dots. He remembers how the trees seemed engaged with his story, almost like it was listening. That's why it stabilized the reading was working. And then he takes it a step further and realizes. Before these things were trees, they were actual human beings. Oscar is genuinely impressed. That's exactly what he'd concluded too, and this 10-year-old just got there on his own. Then Rowan asks what telekinesis actually means because he keeps hearing the word. Oscar explains it's a type of magic that lets you move objects using mana. Rowan demonstrates it right there and it finally clicks for him. He's been using magic this whole time without even knowing it. Dude had no idea. Oscar notes that while it's still at a beginner level, the fact that a kid his age is pulling this off at all is remarkable. Now Oscar remembers something. But no one notices. Rowan mentioned wanting to join the Faith Division, and after everything the boy just went through being betrayed by the people who were supposed to protect him, Oscar genuinely wants to understand why the Faith Division and the Union are the same organization. It's different names, so it's not a small commitment. Robert's honest about it. He doesn't fully trust the Faith Division yet, but his gut tells him Oscar is a good person. He can feel it in his manner. Oscar's a little thrown off hearing a 10-year-old describe him as pure, and he tells the kid that trusting people based on vibes alone could seriously get him killed someday. Robert pushes back, saying he's good at reading people, but Oscar shuts it down gently. That simple. Getting a child involved in their operations isn't something he can just greenlight. Robert starts to wonder if he's too weak, too inexperienced, but Oscar stops him and tells him to listen carefully in life. Raw talent isn't everything. Tone goes serious, and Robert's mood drops immediately. Sulking mode activated. Oscar clarifies, nothing is wrong with Rowan. The problem is making exceptions for outsiders is complicated, and the kid is very young. Robert, not missing a beat, asks the obvious question. Is age really more important than actual ability? That lands. Oscar pauses because the honest answer is Robert did just take down 2 grown men. The talent is real, but the Union frustratingly measures experience by age, not skill. Oscar admits it. Ra asks if that means he's too immature for them, and that's when Oscar decides to give the kid a real shot. He reframes the whole conversation as a practice interview and starts asking real questions. First one, why did Ron kill Edgar? Edgar wasn't an immediate threat at the time. Ron answers without hesitation. Edgar had already killed the shelter owner and his wife. The pattern was obvious. Hesitating would have just meant Ron was next. Oscar acknowledges that point, but pushes further. The boy still killed 2 people. Emotions could have clouded his judgment. Ron agrees that, yeah, his emotions were part of it, and he's not ashamed of that, but he also argues that emotions don't always screw with your thinking. Sometimes they make things clearer. In his judgment, the men in front of him had taken multiple innocent lives. There was nothing to redeem, no reason to spare them, and if he had the power to deliver justice in that moment, that's exactly what he did. Oscar asks the big one, did Ron have the right to kill them? Ron says it was the fairest outcome given everything. He had the power and he used it, but he's not hiding from it either. He knows he killed someone. He's not making excuses, just owning it. Oscar pushes one more time. Is it really necessary? And Rowan, without thinking for a second, said, yep, it was absolutely necessary. There are people whose entire job is carrying out executions. Then he looks Oscar dead in the eyes and says, that's what the union does too. And for a second, Oscar just stares at him because the kid's right. He takes a moment to explain what the union truly stands for. Yes, they carry out justice, but at their core, their goal is a world full of happiness and laughter. A world that's safe, peaceful, stable for every generation that comes after. It's an impossible ideal. They know they'll never fully reach it, but it's the goal they chase regardless. That's the union's real purpose, and the fact that Rowan at 10 years old somehow already gets that. Oscar's impressed. Genuinely, he tells Rowan about an organization called the Grave, a powerful shadowy group threatening the entire kingdom. The cult they just dealt with is just one branch of it. The Union's first division has been working to dismantle the Grave, piece by piece, and Oscar believes that with Rowan's help, they might actually be able to finish the job. Rowan's confused about where he fits in, so Oscar lays it out plainly. Rowan comes to the Union, proves himself, and earns his spot. Simple as that. Until then, Oscar just wants the kid to live up to his own potential. Meeting over at outside, Oscar addresses his team. He notices. He announces that the Tongue Shelter's involvement in aiding the Grave has been confirmed and dealt with. The Union succeeded. The darkness in this area has been eliminated. The shelter will return to normal operations. Then he gives the signal and the division starts to move out. Before he goes, Oscar calls over this 10-on-10 elf baddie Sienna. She walks in and our boy is immediately surprised because she's radiating waves of blue mana like she's practically glowing. Oscar fills her in and tells her to get Rowan to the Union safely. Man, what mad luck this guy has makes grown men want to sell their soul, their grandmother, and their neighbour's cat just to swap places with a 10-year-old. Sienna introduces herself. Pillar of faith, journey, pack anything important, all business, tone sharp and practiced. Rowan has nothing to pack. She raises an eyebrow, gives him one last chance, then opens it up for questions like she's daring him to waste her time. Root immediately asks about her race. Dark elf. Then, because he has absolutely no filter, he blurts out that he expected dark elves to have a much darker aura because hers is bright, radiant even. Sienna looks at him the way you look at something you can't quite categorize. She tells him it's probably his bloodline affecting his perception, and leaves it firmly at that. Oscar says his goodbyes, and in true Rounden fashion, the kid turns to the rest of the team and sincerely tells them to stay safe. The whole team goes quiet, like it's not the sort of things these guys are used to. The scene shifts, and Round and Sienna are setting up camp in the middle of nowhere. Then Sienna pulls out this little handcrafted sheath she's been working on in the background and hands it over to our boy. Round gets so emotional, he immediately goes into full respectful mode, addressing her like she's actual royalty or something. Sienna's like, yeah, cut that out. But calling her big sister felt weird too, so, after thinking for a second, Rand just settles on Sienna since they're going to be working together anyway. It's such an awkward, particularly wholesome solution that Sienna has to literally turn around to hide how much it got to her. A dark elf assassin getting flustered by a kid. Then, Rowan starts messing around with his telekinesis, making his broken blade spin in the air, and Sienna is just watching like, the hell even is this power? Rowan mentions the vice captain, called it telekinetic magic, and Sienna is like, yeah sure, the closest thing we've got, but honestly, that word doesn't really do it justice. Rowan's confused, so she breaks it down. His magic is legitimately one of a kind. Most mages need to chant spells, draw magic circles, and do the whole song and dance just to touch mana. This kid, he just does it. No instructions, no training wheels, nothing. Tells him that kind of raw mana control is something only the ancient elves had, the OG elves, from before the race, split into dark elves, high elves, and all that. Then she looks him dead in the eyes and tells him, just from his eye colour alone, she knows his parents were absolutely not normal people. That one hits different. Rowan goes quiet, thinking about them. The next day, they show up to the Union. And bro, this place is not what Rowan expected. It's basically an entire city. Sienna's giving him the grand tour, explaining there's a residential district and a commercial district, but the real flex isn't the buildings, it's the people. Every single race on the continent comes here. The strongest warriors and mages in the world have literally set up shop here specifically to protect regular people from psychos like the Grave. That's why they call it the sword and book of the continent. It's got the muscle and the brains. Ramon's absorbing all of this like a sponge, eyes wide, mentally filing everything away. Then they get intercepted. This dude named Lazarus, director of the union's management department, up and immediately locks onto Ramon, and immediately he pulls him aside for a private chat, and they end up in this room that is aggressively bright, almost suspiciously. So Ramon mentally flags that immediately because this kid notices everything. Ramadlomben already knows this place is where all the heavy hitters gather, but what really tips him off about Lazarus is his aura. It's not flashy or intimidating, it's perfectly controlled. Not a single drop wasted. Somehow that's way more impressive than any big showy display. Ramon starts quietly calculating just how strong this guy actually is. Then Lazarus does something unexpected. He politely asks for Rowan's hand and holds it with both of his. And the second he does, Rowan feels it. This man is doing the exact same mana control thing Rowan does, except on a completely different level. Like if Rowan's been drawing stick figures, this guy's out here painting the damn Sistine Chapel. Instead of being scared, Rowan's hyped. He didn't know other people could do this. He didn't know it could even go this far. Man's practically vibrating with excitement. Then Lazarus's eyes slide over to the coin hanging off Rowan, the one he took from the deputy director. Before the man can even ask, Rowan sets the record straight. He didn't steal it, it was his grandma's. He just took back what was already his. Lazarus asks to see the emblem on it. And here's where it gets interesting. He asks nicely, but Rowan's body just straight up doesn't move. He tries to pull his hand back. Catan tries to shift his weight. Catan. Lazarus has basically stitched their mana together, locking him in place without making a single aggressive move. It's the most polite prison cell Rowan's ever been in. Rowan thinks it through in real time. If he can handle the gravity pressure and the mana pressure at the same time, maybe he can slip out. He tries it and he actually pulls it off. Lazarus looks genuinely impressed. But Rowan's already annoyed with himself because all he really did was copy the director's own technique back at him. Nothing original, except Lazarus noticed that too, and he's even more impressed because of it. Lazarus examines the emblem, and for the first time his perfect mana control flickers, just for a split second. Rowan catches it instantly. The director thanks him, genuinely, not just out of politeness for showing him something he'd been wondering about for a long time. Rowan, still curious, just straight up asks, "Are you the strongest person in the Union?" Lazarus laughs and waves it off, calling himself just an old raccoon, helping the next generation. Rowan takes that completely literally and misses the joke entirely, which is very on brand for him, but Lazarus answers honestly, "The 17 captains are terrifying. The commander above them is on another level entirely, and then there's the governor and top brass above even that compared to those people." Yeah, the raccoon checks out. Ronan asks if he can come back with more questions sometime. Lazarus tells him, sure, just book an appointment. As they wrap up, Ronan mentally files Lazarus under 2 categories, good and strong. High praise coming from this kid. He walks out feeling solid. Coming to the Union was the right move, and then he sees his new home, the Union Academy. Sienna explains it's where Union members send their kids when they're away on long missions, which basically makes it a school full of kids who grew up in this life. Specialized. It covers swordsmanship, magic, martial arts, all of it, building students up from the ground up. The idea is 5 years here could turn Ron into something genuinely terrifying. The second she mentions school, something in Ronin just lights up. To the next day, and our boy is looking fresh in his new uniform, dripped out and ready to learn. He asks the woman if she's a teacher, and she's like, "Oh, I forgot to introduce myself properly." It turns out she's Daphne, the head of academic affairs and a language teacher. Basically, she's kind of a big deal. She hands him the first-year class schedule with a list of elective subjects he can pick from. And bro, the options are stacked. Mana manipulation, swordsmanship, astronomy, kinds of cool. Our boy looks at this menu of knowledge and his eyes light up. So, what does he do? He checks every single box. When Daphne gets the paper back, her jaw hits the floor. She's like, "Kid, are you insane? This workload would break most students. If you fail even one of these classes, you're cooked." But our boy's sitting there like, what's the problem? Because he genuinely doesn't understand why anyone would find studying difficult. Daphne's looking at him like he's an alien because what kind of child wants to study everything? Most kids would rather eat dirt than do homework, but this little psychopath is built different. She's trying to warn him about the insane amount of homework he'll have. He's not budging. Finally, she just gives up and accepts his list, probably thinking, you know what, let him learn the hard way. She tells him to follow her to his first class. In the next scene, our boy walks into the classroom behind Daphne. His eyes are darting everywhere. Taking it all in, he immediately notices something important. Every kid in this room has way denser mana than he does. This confirms what he already suspected. His body is the problem, not his ability. Anyway, Daphne introduces him as the late transfer student and gives him the floor. Rowan steps up to introduce himself, and he's getting flashbacks to those reading sessions at the shelter, so this feels familiar. He gives this polite, wholesome introduction about hoping to get along with everyone, and bro, his voice. This kid's voice is so smooth and sincere that it literally touches the teacher's heart. Look at this little bastard already rising up the teacher. Once our boy takes his seat, the class begins. Daphne tells everyone to turn to page 24 and asks Rowan to read since she knows he learned how back at the shelter. He opens the book and immediately recognizes it. It's the same damn book Amy used to test him with. His mind flashes back to the shelter where he was reading beautifully with this elegant tone that had everyone mesmerized. But now he's feeling some type of way because Hasmichels, Amy, the girl who taught him, turned out to be part of the Lutel group that betrayed him. Still, the boy's mature for his age. He's thinking maybe he should give her a chance to explain herself because he doesn't actually know her side of the story yet. In his head, he's like, people are way more complicated than textbooks, which is some deep for a kid to be thinking. By the time he finishes reading the passage, the entire class erupts in applause. Even the teacher is gushing about how talented he is, praising the school for snagging such a gifted student. After class, kids come up to him like, yo, you're insane. Daphne never gets impressed by students, but you had her shook. Our boy's collecting fans left and right. But then this short-haired girl with green eyes approaches him. The moment he sees her, something clicks. He recognizes her from that vision he had earlier. She introduces herself as Sophie Powell, the class president and student representative. They shake hands and she asks what elective he picked. He mentions swordsmanship and she notices he only has a tiny dagger on him. She's like, oh, are you trying to join the union? Rowan's confused because he literally just wanted to study everything. He wasn't thinking about the union at all. But now he's curious, so he asks if you need swordsmanship to join. She gives him this weird look like, bro, are you serious right now? Which makes him wonder if he just said something dumb. In the next scene, all the students show up at the training grounds where the instructor is waiting. Suddenly, everyone just bolts toward the instructor, and our boy's standing there like, what the hell? They yell back at him, we're going ahead. But that's not even the wild part. The wild part is that they're all using mana to boost their speed. Rowan's eyes light up because now he gets it. Oh, we're doing this. Betty activates his own mana and zooms past every single student despite starting way behind them. Even Sophie is watching this unfold like this kid is not normal. She can tell his speed is unnatural because he's making it look too easy. Meanwhile, our boy doesn't care about the race or winning it. He's having the time of his life, laughing and challenging everyone to catch him. All this commotion caught the instructor's eyes. He turns around and sees this tiny kid is flying across the training ground, and he's thinking, I need to keep an eye on this one. A few moments later, the race ends. Everyone's gasping for air, cursing whoever thought this was a good idea. Meanwhile, the boy's chilling. They all gather for assembly, and Rowan's just happy he found people who can use mana like him. Meanwhile, Sophie's having an existential crisis, thinking, is this kid even human? The way he accelerated, the way he lapped everyone, the fact that he's not even tired. She's convinced he might be a demon. Rowan notices her staring and cheerfully asks, did you enjoy the race? Sophie's internally screaming like, little demon just dunked on all of us and has the audacity to ask if we had fun. After everyone catches their breath, the instructor finally introduces himself as Diego Sanchez, a swordsmanship master and their teacher for this class. The boys hyped as hell to learn from this guy. Diego tells everyone to grab a wooden sword, and you can see the pain on these kids' faces because they're still exhausted from that death race earlier. But here's the thing. Rowan's just standing there frozen. Diego's like, kid, move your ass. But our boy's hesitating, looking at that wooden sword like it's about to bite him. He's having PTSD flashbacks of Blake, and Diego immediately picks up on it. The instructor can see the fear in his eyes, so he drops some wisdom on him. Look, it can be dangerous, sure, but at the end of the day, it's just a tool. The sword doesn't have intentions. It reveals the character of the person holding it. That's why you need to face this fear. And damn, that actually hit different for our boy. He has this realization moment like, wait, If Blake had beaten my ass with a staff instead, would I be scared of staffs right now? He figures out that swords aren't the problem. The person wielding them is, so he walks up and grabs the blade, thinking to himself that he doesn't need to become some legendary swordsmaster, but he also shouldn't be running away from this. Diego watches him pick up the sword and immediately notices two things. The kid has natural talent in how he holds it, but he's lacking in willpower. The instructor announces they're doing sparring matches in pairs, and any fighting method is cool as long as you beat your opponent. Then Diego drops the bomb. Rowan's paired up with Sophie. Both of them are like, "Wait, what?" And the other kids are already placing bets, saying Sophie's going to destroy him because she comes from a prestigious sword family and has actual training. The teacher gives them the signal to get ready, and the match begins. Sophie takes this wide stance with her sword, looking all professional and eyeing our boy down like a hawk. Rowan's standing there thinking, so this is what real swordsmanship looks like. He's actually impressed by how she controls her weapon. It feels completely different from the terrifying experience he had with Blake. He's adjusting his own blade, wondering what good swordsmanship even means when he naturally falls into his own stance. The second he does this, both Diego and Sophie's eyes go wide. This kid just pulled off a perfect neutral stance on his first try like it's nothing. It's the kind of thing that should be impossible for a beginner. But here we are. Sophie shook, but she's not about to lose because her family's pride is on the line. She charges in with her first attack, fully committed. Rowan dodges. Sophie swings again. He dodges. She aims for his chest. He's already moving out of the way. She tries a different angle. Nope, he saw that coming too. She's getting increasingly frustrated, because this boy is reading her like an open book, dodging and blocking every single move she makes. It's like he can see the future or some. Eventually, Sophie's being pushed backward, completely on the defensive. She's mentally breaking down because her cautious opponent has predicted her every move. Finally, she admits defeat and asks for a rematch. Our boy smiles and agrees. After everything's done, they end up talking for a while. Sophie's genuinely impressed by his natural talent. Turns out, they fought 4 times total, and they split at 22. Sophie's actually excited now, thinking she finally found someone worth sparring with regularly. The students are hyped, because the next class is magic, which means they can finally sit down and rest. But Rowan's confused, asking, isn't this supposed to be one of the most important classes for joining the union? Everyone just stares at him like he grew a second head. One kid's like, bro, our teacher is so far above our level that it's basically impossible to learn anything from him. Ron's like, I mean, learning magic is hard, but how bad can the teacher be? At this point, the students are realizing this kid knows nothing about common knowledge. They explain that the guy teaching them basic magic is a former commander and the magic dean of the academy, the legendary Professor Arthur himself. To a few moments later, and magic class is now in session. Professor Arthur walks in, and Sophie starts whispering to Rowan about how this guy used to be a legendary commander back in the day. Basically, the Chuck Norris of magic. Our boy's analysing the professor's mana and realises it's even denser than the director's. At this point, Rowan's wondering who the hell is the strongest person in the union, and more importantly, can I challenge them to an arm wrestling match? He notices the new kid and introduces himself as the basic magic teacher, but he's also quick to add that most students find his class annoying as hell. But Rowan's sitting there with stars in his eyes because he genuinely wants to become a mage and join the union. This makes the old professor's day. He's praising our boy's spirit, but also told him, you know, pursuing magic means you're basically abandoning the path of swordsmanship, right? And that's when it clicks for Ran. That's why his classmates gave him weird looks earlier. He asks why that's the case, and Arthur tells Sophie to explain. She breaks it down. To master magic, you need to learn an insane amount of knowledge, and that takes a massive toll on your body and mind. Even if you're gifted, you won't be recognized as a real mage without at least 10 years of training. Arthur confirms this and adds that it's already hard enough to become a union member after graduation. But here's the kicker. So, being a first-class mage isn't even good enough to become an active member. You need to reach at least second class. After hearing all this, our boy's a little disappointed. But then he goes, all right, bet, I'll reach third class before I graduate. Everyone's jaws drop because this kid clearly has no idea what the third-class magic even means yet. Arthur's trying not to laugh as he writes on the board, explaining that swordsmanship is the union's main focus, while magic is for pursuing knowledge and wisdom. Then he draws this super complex formula for creating a basic fire arrow spell. But something's off about it, and our boy, notices immediately because he's seen this exact formula before back at the ritual pit. Arthur's impressed, explaining that most students wouldn't catch the error because it looks so complicated. He mentions that while a fire arrow is considered basic, the more advanced spells are exponentially harder. Then he demonstrates the spell, creating this beautiful fire arrow in front of everyone. But Rowan notices something strange. The arrow looks unstable, like it's about to fizzle out any second, kind of like my motivation on a Sunday evening. Arthur explains that magic formulas need to be perfect. Even one tiny mistake after using all that mana can destroy the entire spell. Then he carefully adds one final component to the formula, and boom, the arrow suddenly becomes way larger and more powerful. Everyone's mesmerized by the display, probably thinking, damn, it's hot. Because it literally is. It's fire. Arthur drops more knowledge. Mages have to memorize these formulas and make sure they're flawless every time. Adjusting a spell requires insane patience and skill. Turning a fire arrow into a fireball uses more mana and puts extra strain on your mind and body. On top of that, magic has way more limitations compared to swordsmanship. Wolfie chimes in explaining that channeling mana directly into a weapon is usually easier and more efficient than casting complex spells. The instructor adds that using mana is extremely draining. So, a mage's power depends entirely on their personal mana reserves. Rowan's connecting the dots now, too. He understands that a mage's abilities are limited by the size of their mana pool, and, if that's true, then his naturally low mana is going to be a massive problem. Still, he's thinking maybe if he studies the principles hard enough, he can find some kind of workaround, even though it seems like a long shot. Pulse. Professor Arthur tests him with a question, asking what's needed to cast a spell. Rowan correctly answers that you need a formula. Then, he adds that these formulas would be impossible for mages to remember mid-battle. That's why they developed magic circles, which represent the formula's principles. Suddenly, Rowan has another epiphany. Those tattoos he saw in the shelter director's arm were actually a magic circle and not a midlife crisis with some questionable ink choices. Arthur confirms that some mages engrave these circles on their bodies to cast spells faster. The magic circle is basically a symbol if the formula is the equation. The magic circle is its symbolic representation. Then Rowan hits them with another question. Is chanting just the verbal conversion of the formula? They're startled because holy, this kid just figured that out on his first day. Meanwhile, some students have been here for 3 years and still can't figure out which end of the wand to point at things. Ron explains his reasoning. The formula on the board is like a blueprint for creating a fireball. If the magic circle is a symbol, then chanting must be the linguistic conversion of the same spell. The professor is smiling with pride now, because this is a concept that many mages spend years studying. Arthur confirms that chanting is about saying the right words and infusing mana into each one to create an incantation. To demonstrate, he casts a powerful fireball using only his voice. He also mentions that speed, tone, and emotional state all affect the spell, making it similar to recitation. And our boy's absolutely fascinated. No recitation in his entire life has ever captivated him like this one. The professor's worried he might have scared Rowan off with all this complexity, so he asks if he still wants to pursue his ambitious goal. Our boy's response, hell yeah, I'm even more interested now. There's pleased and decides to start the class by teaching ancient languages. He hands out books for everyone to decode, and you can see the despair on these kids' faces. By the end of class, Sophie's completely drained from all the homework, regretting enrolling in so many classes this semester. Meanwhile, Rowan's sitting there completely fine, unfazed, because this absolute madman filled his entire schedule with classes. No breaks, nothing. His curiosity is so intense, it's actually annoying. Sophie, at this point, she mentions that his roommate is someone named Lucas, which doesn't ring any bells for Rowan. She says goodbye and heads out. Back in his dorm room, our boy's already grinding. He's trying to understand the spell based on the formula, thinking that since he doesn't have the mana reserves to use powerful magic the normal way, maybe he can create a new kind of magic better suited to his abilities. And somehow, to his complete shock, he actually succeeds in creating a functional spell. This is insane. Incredible accomplishment, but there's a catch. The physical toll it took on his body was brutal. The spell worked, but it knocked him out cold. When Lucas returns to their room, he finds Rowan passed out on the floor, and he's just standing there like, what the hell happened here? The scene shifts, and while our boy's knocked out cold, he starts hearing a familiar voice calling to him. It's Sienna, and she's over here having a guilt trip, blaming herself and the other teachers for pushing him too hard. They all thought he was some genius prodigy who could handle anything they threw at him, but clearly they up. Finally, our boy's eyes open and the first thing he sees is Lucas hovering over him like a concerned mother hen. This dude is relieved, genuinely happy Rowan didn't die or something. He introduces himself properly as Lucas von Parcel and confirms he's Rowan's new roommate. And he's just thankful he didn't walk in on a corpse, because finding your roommate passed out on the floor is not how you want to start the semester. Rowan's sitting there confused as hell, like, wait, I passed out? Apparently, yeah. It's not life-threatening or anything. What he can't wrap his head around is why Lucas is acting like he's his helicopter mom right now. Turns out Lucas's dad, who just happens to be Oscar, the vice captain, specifically ordered his son to babysit Rowan's ass. And this man is really out here hoping Rowan will drop a good word about him to Daddy Dearest. Based on how chill Lucas seems, Rowan figures he's trustworthy enough. Also, can we talk about how Lucas is massive? Like, you'd swear this guy's a senior, but nope. Year as Rowan. He is 2 years older though. And before you think he's some late bloomer who started school late, let me stop you right there. My man has failed attendance requirements twice. This absolute legend is a professional at not showing up to class. He's also allergic to studying, but we'll get to that later. Lucas asks if Rowan knocked himself out practicing magic, which is a fair assumption since their room looks like a bomb went off. Rowan confirms he was trying to cast a fireball. Everything after that is blank. Lucas, who's more of a sword guy himself, admits he's kind of disappointed. Rowan isn't leaning into his obvious sword talent since he's basically following in his dad's footsteps anyway. Rowan's looking at Lucas and noticing some things. Even though the dude's 2 years older, his mana is way denser than other students and his physical build absolutely jacked. Our boy's genuinely impressed by the work Lucas has put in and feeling a bit insecure that he's falling behind. Despite just waking up from passing out, Rowan's ready to drag himself to class like the stubborn idiot he is, but Lucas somehow talks him into skipping. He's getting some fresh air and grabbing food instead. Ran agrees, but can't help roasting him. This is exactly why you failed twice. You'll skip class for literally any reason. Cut to them finding a spot to eat, and Lucas is insisting Rowan needs to stuff his face to recover. But then Rowan senses this faint mana trace nearby. He's like, we have to check that out. And Lucas is down, so they head to a magic shop. Inside, Rowan notices most items are infused with mana. Lucas is over in the corner sneezing his lungs out from all the dust, like he's allergic to the entire store. Then, the horrible realization hits Rowan. He's broke, like completely, utterly, devastatingly broke. Here regretting not keeping some cash from the shelter. But Lucas, proving he's a real one, offers to cover him since it's technically part of his dad's assignment anyway. This man's really earning his homie card. Our boy decides to test the waters and jokingly asks Lucas to buy everything in the shop. Lucas pulls out this sad little handful of coins that couldn't buy jacks, but it should at least cover one item. Rowan starts browsing for something within his roommate's peasant budget. Then something catches his eye and egg with this weird magic circle carved into it. It's giving off this sharp, murky mana signature that's honestly fascinating. And the best part, the price tag is dirt cheap. The shop owner walks over and explains he's looking at the stone of Galatia, which most people just use as fancy home decor. Everyone assumes the egg will never hatch, so it's basically a useless paperweight that looks cool on a shelf. Rowan asks what's inside, but even the owner doesn't know. According to legend, the stone acts as a cage for some mystery creature. The owner bought it, thinking he'd flip it for profit, but nobody gave a damn since it never hatched. Rowan's curious if breaking the seal would do anything, but the owner tells him not to get his hopes up. You'd need some extremely unique spell to crack it open. But our boy's hooked. He can tell this magic circle is expert level at least a dozen times more complex than a basic fireball spell. He asks Lucas for his opinion, and Lucas just shrugs like it's cooler than some boring book. Plus, you could bash someone's head in with it if needed. Logic. Rowan decides to buy the stone and walks out happy as hell with his mysterious magical egg. It's already evening, but Lucas wants to end their hooky day on a high note. He suggests they visit the most impressive place in the entire Union, the clock tower. So that's the definition of built different. And finally, there's the governor, the highest authority on the whole continent, with a rank equivalent to a king, standing there staring at the clock tower from a distance. Rowan's reflecting on the long-ass journey ahead to reach the level of these legendary figures. But you can see it in his eyes. He's determined as hell to stand alongside them one day. Fran and Lucas stayed at arguably the most impressive spot in the entire Union until the sun dipped and night took over. Our boy's absolutely mesmerized by this watchtower and its insane height. You can literally see this thing from almost anywhere in the Union, even from the academy. Curiosity gets the better of him, so he asks Lucas what the red hands on the clock mean and how to read them. Lucas scratches his head and squints like he's trying real hard to remember. After forcing his two brain cells to work together, he finally recalls that the characters on the outer red band show the current year. Ronan takes a closer look and realizes the symbols are in ancient languages. Then Lucas just throws in the towel and admits he never learned how to read these clocks. My man's been living here his entire life and never bothered figuring it out. Ron uses his big brain energy and works it out. It says year 2Q62, which tracks since they're currently in Kingdom, year 2Q62. From there, he decodes the other dials for month and day. It's 7:20 p.m. on June 14th, 262. Our boy needed maybe a minute to crack this, while Lucas, who literally grew up staring at this tower, never gave enough shits to learn. But here's where things get heavy. The reason Ron's so obsessed with this tower is because he's seen it before in that grim-ass vision from the tree. That illusion showed the clock tower as ground zero for total apocalyptic destruction. And if he's remembering correctly, the clock in his vision was pointing to June 14th, exactly 10 years from today. After chilling a bit longer, the roommates finally head back to their dorm. Once Lucas confirms Ron's not going to pass out again, he grabs his wooden sword and dips. This dude may skip every class known to man, but he never misses training. If he skips even one day of physical work, he feels his body getting sluggish. Just like that, our boy's left alone with his spiraling thoughts. The apocalyptic vision the mysterious tree showed him is impossible to shake off. There's a strong possibility it wasn't just some random nightmare. It could have been a legit precognitive dream showing him the actual future. And if that's true, he needs to change it. Through his thoughts, Robin closes his eyes and enters his mind palace. First step, collect as much information as possible from the memories stored in his brain. With his perfect recall ability, he reviews the snapshots of the clock tower he saw earlier, constructing every tiny detail with perfect accuracy like he's building a 3D model in his head. Once he's satisfied, he moves to the next step, filling in gaps and blind spots in chronological order. He identifies specific things that appeared in the past that would later cause deaths in the possible future he witnessed. Buildings, roofs, structures, everything's accounted for. He recalls seeing a corpse of someone who died from a collapsed roof. Our boy's meticulously overlapping what he knows of reality with his dark vision, carefully stitching together what happens in each scene like some detective from hell. After filtering everything down to the most critical details, he pulls up the memory of that truly dreadful illusion. He recreates the scene the tree shared with him and enhances areas where he can add more detail. For a moment, he hesitates. He doesn't want to replay that sorrowful nightmare again. But then he remembers more. The bodies on the ground, they look like his friends. Sophie, Lucas and Sienna were all there, lifeless and slightly older. That's the kind of future he absolutely refuses to accept. It puts into perspective just how weak and pathetic he is now. What a complete failure he'll become if he doesn't change. He wants to know what rank he managed to reach in that vision. So, he searches through the mountains of data in his mind. After digging through everything, he finds it. Single lingering scene showing his future self. From the vision's default angle, his rank badge isn't visible, but Rowan's not giving up that easily. His analytical mind develops a method to actually change the viewing angle of the memory, which requires him to dive much deeper into the shared vision of the burning Union. After confirming all the details are locked in, he proceeds turning his full attention to the image of his supposed future self. He focuses on future him's chest to see the rank badge clearly, and then he sees something absolutely horrifying. Young Rowan feels his blood run ice cold. It's difficult to make out at first, but his future self looks bloodied and beaten where his rank badge should be. His chest is a massive gaping wound, exposing his insides like some gore scene. Turns out, his friends aren't the only ones destined for a terrible fate. Rowan himself is going to die a gruesome-ass death. After forcing himself through that traumatic mind, he withdraws. He pulls his consciousness back out of the nightmarish vision and slowly opens his eyes, sitting there alone with his soul crushed and thoughts racing. He wonders if the vision was meant to be some kind of warning from the tree. The fall of the Union means the death of the kingdom and the continent. It would be the literal end of the world and complete extinction of humanity. As far as he understands, the tree is a creation of black magic made from human mana, moulded by sacrificial victims caught between life and death. Besides all the horrible scenes, there was also this mysterious hooded figure present in the vision. Asked him, maybe that person holds the key to understanding everything. Round maintains a healthy dose of skepticism about whether what he witnessed is legit. But to make sure that nightmare scene doesn't happen, he needs to create a different future using the scraps of information he has. The most effective method: start by changing himself. Since his future looked absolutely bleak, his rank was a lost cause, and he was wearing the union's black suit. That maybe not becoming a union member could butterfly affect the timeline enough. Perhaps he could take an official role in the management bureau instead, since they wear red suits. Or, and here's the crazy option, Chupley, he could do the unprecedented and aim for the white suit that only the commander wears, achieving it before the vision comes true in 10 years. The next day, the roommates get ready for class after their little hooky adventure. This reminds Ron that Professor Daphne asked him to swing by the faculty office before class. After delivering the message, Lucas cheerfully heads toward campus, by himself, probably ready to skip again later. Ron's left standing there, wondering why the hell Professor Daphne would want to meet with him privately. Can't be good news, right? So, the boy throws on his uniform and marches straight to the faculty office where Professor Daphne hits him with that concerned mom energy, asking how he's doing after yesterday's little health incident. Turns out Lucas snitched. Informed her, and she was cool enough to mark it down as medical leave so Ron wouldn't get screwed over academically. She's looking at his schedule like he's insane, telling him he's taken way too many elective classes and basically begging him to drop some before he burns out again. But Rowan, he's not budging. Man's keeping every single class. In fact, he's hyped as hell for the ones he hasn't even attended yet. Professor Daphne's over here feeling guilty, thinking she caused his collapse. But our boy just smiles and reassures her it'll never happen again. She gives him one last please. Reach out if you need help speech. He thanks her with maximum sincerity before heading to his first class. Here's the thing. These days, Rowan's mana cultivation is so natural, he does it like breathing. Training doesn't even take that much time anymore. But what really matters, our boy has found a new mission. He wants to turn all his homies into absolute powerhouses. The second he walks into the classroom, everyone whips their heads around to stare at him with that "Bro, are you okay?" concern plastered on their faces. They all heard about the incident and were genuinely worried. Rowan's touched by this, and it just makes him more determined to help them level up. His logic, if he can get all of them to reach god-tier power levels, maybe, maybe, they'll all survive that apocalyptic future he knows is coming. So, Rowan clears his throat and asks for everyone's attention, because he needs a favour from the entire class. First, he calls out Isdor, Marissa, Leon, and all the magic nerds who wouldn't touch a sword if their lives depended on it. Then, he addresses Flora, Sebastian, Lucas, and the Sword Bros, who've literally never stepped foot in a magic lecture. The students are low-key emotional that the Academy's new golden boy remembered every single one of their names. Like, these are literal background characters, and he still knows who they are. Sophie, nosy as always, jumps in asking why he's bringing this up out of nowhere. Rowan explains he wants everyone to take both courses, magic and swordsmanship. He's worried he might be asking too much. But here's where it gets funny. Female students are already sold our boy's got that protagonist charm cranked to 100, so they do whatever he asked at this point. No cap. The male students, though, they're side-eyeing this proposal hard. Like, bro, we already picked our courses for a reason. Why would we add more work? Ron gets it, but instead of arguing, he decides actions speak louder than words. He turns to his roommate, Lucas, literally the last person you'd ever expect in a magic class, and asks him to just try basic magic studies for one day. Somehow, with his pure sincerity and protagonist energy, Ron actually pulls it off. Nobody can say no to this man's face. Professor Arthur, the Dean of Magic Studies, walks into the lecture hall and damn near does a double take because there are no empty seats. I've heard the rumours about Ron convincing everyone to show up, and honestly, man's feeling pumped seeing a completely packed lecture hall for once, all thanks to our boy. Ron just wants to prove to everyone that magic isn't some mysterious, impossible thing. Hearing him talk about magic with such genuine hype, Professor Arthur gets curious and asks what Ron plans to demonstrate. Our boy asks permission to use the teaching platform real quick. The professor laughs and warmly invites him to the front because why not? Lucas is sitting in the audience next to Sophie, not knowing if he should be embarrassed or proud that his roommate has absolutely zero fear. Meanwhile, while Rowan's getting ready to do his thing, there's a whole different scene unfolding outside the lecture hall. Big shot from the Union showed up to a first-year class this early in the morning. Professor Daphne immediately clocks that it's probably about Rowan. Director Lazarus admits, yeah, the boy's one reason. Monitoring the school is technically part of his job anyway. On top of the two Union officers, Miss Sienna Runner also rolled up because it's her day off. Though day off is generous, Vice Captain Oscar still gave her a task to handle. Here's the really interesting part. Mr. Diego Sanchez left his precious swordsmanship training grounds to attend a magic class. Apparently, he heard his top freshman swordsman enrolled in magic today and wanted to see what all the hype was about. Next to him is the principal himself, who basically just tagged along to keep Director Lazarus company. Professor Daphne looks at this lineup of Academy and Union VIPs and tells them they cannot disrupt the class under any circumstances. They're here to observe quietly. As she carefully cracks open the lecture hall door, she's immediately smacked in the face by intense heat. There's a straight-up crimson flame floating in the air, eating up all the oxygen in the room. But in complete contrast to this destructive ass fire, the kid who made it looks calm as hell. Rowan standing there looking like pure joy and wonder, personified. Professor Arthur's thrown up a magical barrier to protect the other students while our boy's casually flexing with a perfect fireball. It doesn't matter how talented a student is, the fireball spell isn't something someone Rowan's age should even be attempting. This spell is straight up outside the first-year curriculum. Hell, even the fire arrow, which is a whole tier below the fireball, isn't mastered by students until their 5th year, and even then only by the naturally gifted ones. So, how the hell did this small boy crack the code on a spell he shouldn't be touching for another 5 years? The students are so mesmerized by the flames that literally none of them notice the group of important-ass people who just walked in. The principal, staring at the fireball, thinking he's never seen a spell radiate such pure, refined energy. It's almost like watching holy magic. Diego is a swordmaster, but even he can tell this spell's density and stability are abnormal as hell. Director Lazarus is thinking this defies all common sense. Sure, technically a first year shouldn't be doing this. The fireball is categorized as a simple spell, overall, in the grand scheme of things. That said, watching Rowan hold this fireball in mid-air is still insane. The weird part, the fire's maintaining a consistent size and temperature without even flickering. By all logic, this isn't a normal fireball, it's something completely different. Sienna had already witnessed Rowan's crazy natural mana sense before, but she's still wondering how the hell could a boy who grew up in a corrupt-ass shelter be capable of such beautiful advanced magic. She's completely entranced by the dancing flames in the middle of this packed lecture hall. Then she snaps out of it and reminds everyone about Rowan's collapse yesterday. She's worried he might not be fully recovered yet. So maybe he shouldn't be pushing himself with such a difficult demonstration. Perhaps someone should step in and tell him to chill. But none of the adults want to interrupt. They're all too captivated by what they're watching. But honestly, nobody needs to stress because my man's got complete control. He's pumping a constant stream of mana into this thing using his own custom technique. For him, keeping that mana flow smooth and steady is way more important than making the biggest boom possible. He doesn't want this flame turning into a nuclear disaster if the mana gets wonky. But this is Rowan we're talking about, so obviously that wasn't going to happen. And while he's casually maintaining what could literally be a death ball, actually way more interested in the crazy strong barrier Professor Arthur just threw up to protect everyone. Rowan can tell there's an overlap between how the barrier works and that creepy, endless void from the ritual. They look kind of similar, but do completely different things. His brain starts going down rabbit holes, like, yo, what would happen if I just yeeted this fireball straight into the barrier? Intrusive thoughts hitting different. Instead of testing that theory and potentially turning everyone into crispy nuggets, he compliments Professor Arthur and casually asks what his defensive spell is called. The old professor straight up blanks because he's in complete shock. Like, maintaining a spell this long takes insane focus. Yet, this kid's out here having a full conversation while keeping perfect control of his magic. The absolute audacity of this child. Before anything more wild can go down, Arthur decides to end this whole thing. He manipulates his barrier to completely wrap around and suffocate the flames. Instead of being bummed, his fun's over. Ron's just in pure awe at how clean that was. With the dean's final move, the fireball completely vanishes. Everyone in the room gasps after holding their breath through that entire roller coaster. Looking at this young menace, Professor Arthur genuinely can't decide if he should yell at this kid or give him an award for breaking every magic safety rule ever written. Right then, Director Lazarus confidently walks onto the stage while clapping for our boy. He answers Rowan's earlier question, explaining that the barrier was Arthur's signature move, the Azure Flame Barrier. Hearing this, Rowan turns to his professor and tells him that's a badass name. Arthur's like, I didn't name it, which means someone else blessed his spell with such a fire title since they're talking about names anyway. The dean asks if Rowan's fiery display has a name too. Confused, Rowan's like, nah bro, I just showed you guys a basic fireball, nothing crazy. But anyone with half a brain, rent and decent magic knowledge would know that spell was not just a basic fireball, and Rowan, more than anyone, should know that. Looks away and admits he was playing dumb. He hasn't actually named his technique yet. Director Lazarus cuts in saying as head of the bureau, he can't just ignore what happened here. He asks why Rowan did something so ridiculously dangerous. Without missing a beat, Rowan answers straight up. He was confident he could control the fire and was sure Professor Arthur had his back no matter what. He had no other agenda except showing his classmates what's possible. He wanted to give them confidence in their own magic. Maybe some were curious, but too scared to try. The dean points out that casting a fireball before graduation is already incredible. So, what do you call a freshman who did that? This was Rowan's way of proving nothing's impossible. He can only talk like this because he's completely clueless about what an absolute freak of nature genius he actually is. Still, Professor Arthur is feeling kind of awkward as an educator. He's wondering if he's been accidentally holding back the younger generation with his boomer teaching methods. This young kid just made him realize his old school approach might not work for every student. Then, Rowan turns to the dean and asks for a bit more stage time. Still something else he wants to show everyone. This time, our boy calls his roommate Lucas up, catching Lucas completely off guard. Lucas is internally screaming like, why am I the guinea pig? But walks toward the stage anyway, because what else is he going to do? Once Lucas gets there, Rowan excitedly explains he wants to help this swordsman cast his first spell. The way Rowan sees it, magic and swordsmanship are both just different flavors of mana manipulation. Lucas trains his body in mana every day, so he should be able to dabble in magic too, right? Here's the thing. This dude who's failed freshman year 3 times has never cracked open a magic book in his life. How's he supposed to cast a spell? Rowan suggests starting with an incantation. Since Lucas has 0 magic training, an incantation should be easier than trying to draw a magic circle or figure out formulas. So Rowan slowly starts reciting this fiery incantation in the ancient language. Lucas tries copying him, but can't get his tongue around these weird-ass words. Rowan's doing his best to stay patient and teach Lucas with maximum hype, but they can't even get through one sentence. Our boy genuinely thought someone who failed first year 3 times would at least know some ancient language by now. But nope, still he's not giving up. Robert translates the incantation to explain what they're trying to make, to recite this poem-like thing with a funky rhythm. Lucas cringes hard at the thought of having to recite magic like some Renaissance fair reject. Robert keeps going with the translated version while watching his classmates. The longer he talks, the more confused and lost everyone looks. Suddenly, our boy gets hit with this wave of helplessness. He thought he could just hop on stage and share his knowledge. But nobody gets what he's trying to do. If they're stuck at square one, what about that horrible fate waiting in 10 years? If they don't get stronger, Robert doesn't know what to do. He started with what he thought was the easiest incantation possible, something even Lucas should be able to grasp. But not only are the other students lost. Even Sophie of all people looks totally confused, like Robert speaking Klingon. Our prodigy just freezes up. Before things spiral into a full anxiety attack, Arthur swoops in for damage control, praising Robert for a solid first try at teaching. That said, he asks if Robert could teach him the spell formula for this modified incantation. The request snaps Rowan out of his panic spiral. He uses telekinesis to grab a piece of chalk and starts writing out the full formula on the board. Everyone's equally amazed and entertained by how smooth that was. Like bro didn't even need his hands, it doesn't take long for him to write down the complete blueprint. Arthur summons his barrier again. This time it's protecting the people on stage instead of the audience. Director Lazarus and the dean study the writing on the board with laser focus. When asked where he learnt this formula, Rowan casually says he never copied it, what Professor Arthur wrote, and just tweaked it. Anyone with a trained eye can immediately tell this is not a simple tweak. The boy adjusted a few things to create a spell that worked better for him personally. He doesn't realize how crazy his claim actually is. He's basically saying he invented a completely new spell formula from scratch. The director and dean exchange a look. They need to have a serious talk about what to do next, and will call a meeting elsewhere. Before leaving, Director Lazarus thanks our boy for showing off such an innovative formula. Meanwhile, the dean turns to the dark elf and asks her name. She introduces herself as Sienna from the Pillar of Faith, saluting all formally. Then the dean unexpectedly dumps the rest of today's lecture onto her. She can teach them anything, tell them to study, practice swordsmanship, or whatever. Anything's cool as long as nobody dies. Professor Diego also has the audacity to dump his next class onto poor Sienna, who was literally just vibing in the wrong place at the wrong time. Before he dips, there's one last thing. Professor Arthur drops the magical barrier that was separating them from the students. The adults make the exit to discuss some serious business, leaving Sienna alone with a classroom full of chaotic first years. Lecture halls buzzing with whispers about what just happened. Sienna shuts all of them up by slamming her hand down on the table. That one move scares most students into dead silence. Sienna, runner of the Pillar of Faith, announces she's been temporarily assigned to cover the remaining classes. She's going to treat this like a real class, and they better do the same. Everyone must participate like she's an actual professor. Sienna might sound all professional and confident. Internally, she's freaking out. She's completely out of her depth here. She was not built for teaching, bro. And can you blame her? She's supposed to be a soldier on the ground and eye candy for us. Wait, that's not right. Anyway, the entire faculty, including everyone who witnessed Rowan's whole magic showcase, just got called in for an emergency meeting. Some of these professors are bugging out because, apparently, this type of emergency committee meeting hasn't happened in years. Of these folks have never even experienced this before. They're sitting there sweating what the hell is going on? Director Lazarus walks in all professional and calm as usual, ready to drop the main agenda about Union Academy's education policy. Next up on the chopping block, our boy Rowan, the literal reason they're all here in the first place. Professor Arthur stands up and lays out all the facts about this kid and his fireball situation. The old man's mind is blown because apparently this freshman, literal first year, just looked at a complex spell and went, "Nah, I'm going to do my own thing," and created something completely unique. Sure, the power was weak, but homie straight up edited the magical formula like he was remixing a beat. The ability to reconstruct spells this freely, that's some never been done before. Obviously, some of the other professors are side-eyeing this whole thing, being all skeptical and whatnot. What are they going to say when the Dean of Magic Studies has already verified everything? Director Lazarus even promises to throw the Bureau's resources at analysing this further. So basically, they have to accept that this kid might have just discovered an entirely new way to approach magic. Cool. So Rowan sounds like some once-in-a-generation genius, right? But as an academy, they need to figure out how to actually teach this prodigy without fumbling the bag. Professors want to stick to the old-school methods, but others are like, bro, this genius needs specialised education that matches his level. The problem is personalised education goes against their whole public institution principles. They can't afford to mess this up and lose someone this talented. Then one professor suggests just letting him join the union early. And immediately the whole room starts throwing hands. Everyone's yelling over each other about that idea. Still, they agree. Field education seems like the move, but they have to be careful about it, so they ask if there are any other concerns about the boy. Arthur goes quiet for a second, and you can tell he's thinking hard. Finally, he drops the bomb. Rowan might have some personality issues. The other professors are confused as hell, because, from what they've heard, the kid's kind and polite. Arthur's not denying that, but he's worried Rowan doesn't really consider other people's feelings. See, the union values ability and performance above everything else. With Rowan's insane talent, he's going to stand out immediately, but the way he is right now, the boy might struggle getting accepted. He could fail the final stage of the admission exam, which is just a simple interview with someone who actually cares about character. Some professors immediately jump to Rowan's defense, saying his actions came from good intentions. He's just clueless and accidentally makes people uncomfortable. Students to grow together, the skill level needs to be somewhat balanced, but the gap between this prodigy and the other freshman is too damn big. We're talking about a child who can invent new magic on the fly. Since the council's just going in circles, Director Lazarus suggests they bring the boy in for an interview. Everyone agrees it's a good idea, so nobody objects. A few moments later, Rowan gets escorted into the faculty room and sits down at this massive meeting table, looking nervous as hell. Professor Daphne tries to make him comfortable and asks what he's feeling. She guesses he feels bad about what happened with Lucas earlier, and she hits the nail on the head. Rowan admits he's frustrated for not understanding his friend's capabilities properly. He jumps in trying to comfort him about how difficult teaching's magic is today, showed him that reality firsthand. So Rowan's been sitting there overthinking and has formed some theories about his classmates. Maybe Lucas didn't give magic a real chance because he's just not interested. Maybe he started training with a sword too early and his brain only developed for that skill. Maybe Rowan pressured his friend into focusing on something different without thinking about his personal situation. He feels regretful and ashamed about all this. But then, and this is where it gets wild, our boy drops another bomb. He's also worried that Lucas and some of his other new friends might actually be sick. This absolute prodigy genuinely thinks his perfectly normal classmates have some kind of illness just because they have normal talent levels. Like, bro, what? He quickly reassures Rowan there's no sickness whatsoever. Hearing the old professor's words helps our eccentric genius finally relax a bit. Seeing Rowan smile, Director Lazarus asks why he was so eager to teach everyone magic in the first place. Rowan explains it doesn't even have to be magic specifically. He just wants to grow stronger together with his new friends so they can all become official union members together in the future. Hearing this completely innocent and wholesome answer, the professor's concerns just evaporate, their worries about Rowan's personality gone. Professor Daphne is looking at him with straight-up pride. With that, Rowan gets dismissed. The meeting went well and he can finally breathe. A few hours later, these professors literally wrote up an entirely new education policy for first years. They're going to match each student's pace. Academic abilities will align with the top students, while social development aligns with the average. The Union Academy is about to head in a completely new direction. Imagine being so gifted that you accidentally reform your entire school's education system. The whole faculty pulled an all-nighter figuring out the details. The very next day, they implement this curriculum overhaul immediately. No warning, no delay, just straight-up changes everything overnight. Out on the training field, there's an announcement. Professor Diego Sanchez announces that swordsmanship and magic are now mandatory for all students. Lucas doesn't even hear the announcement because he's yawning loud enough to wake the dead. Ron is shocked by how fast they made this change. Furthermore, active union members will now join every class as assistant instructors. Students can ask them questions and learn from their real-world field experience. On top of that, Rowan, Sophie, and Lucas are going to train exclusively among themselves, rotating sparring matches. Lucas is hyped. He's been dying to test his roommate's skills. Sophie's equally excited because this is her chance to see how her sword skills stack up against the best. Lucas immediately challenges Rowan to spar first. Sophie's waiting for the next round. When her turn comes, it doesn't take long before her wooden sword gets knocked clean out of her hand. She thought she'd at least put up a decent fight, but that dream died quick. Rowan's an absolute taunt monster who reads her sword movements like he's got the script ahead of time. But Sophie doesn't give up. She spots a brief opening, but can't capitalize on it with more training. Maybe she can actually land hits. After recovering from the surprising loss, she respectfully shakes Rowan's hand and asks if he can spot any major flaws in her technique. Rowan casually explains her mana flow's slightly off. If she adjusts the flow's direction, she should improve right away. Lucas chimes in and simplifies it by saying she needs to stop swinging wildly and focus on precision. Also, her legs wobble sometimes, probably from weak leg strength. Rowan agrees Lucas is harsh, but making valid points. However, Lucas's explanation doesn't cover everything. Right now, Sophie's splitting her mana 50-50 between upper and lower body. If she shifts more mana to her lower half for better stabilization, her stance will improve drastically. So, that while Rowan gives genuinely valuable advice, Lucas just roasts her. Watching his top 3 students, vibing in their own unique way, makes Professor Diego smile. He's thinking there's no way Professor Arthur was right about Rowan having personality issues. Seeing how innocent and kind-hearted this boy is, he realizes the adults were worried over nothing. So, a few days roll by, and our boy is back with the professor for another Hato. He heart in the faculty office. This woman's basically been his fairy godmother at this point, making sure he's got everything he needs to survive school life. And honestly, our boy's been thriving. He's no longer walking around with that emotional baggage about his friends. He actually gets them now and knows their strengths, weaknesses, and the whole deal. Daph's just sitting there proud as hell that this genius finally figured out how to have basic human empathy. School's been treating Rowan pretty well. His friends are hyping him up, just sharing snacks, and living that wholesome academy life. But then, there's this other situation that's got our boy completely confused. The girls keep asking him out like they're dropping hints left and right, asking him to go shopping or look at flowers after class. This absolute nerd cannot comprehend what any of that has to do with his studies. Professor Daphne's over here trying not to laugh because you know hormones exist and people catch feelings at this age. But Rowan, his default response to every invitation is basically, nah, let's study together instead. My guy is clueless, peak virgin energy. So Daphne decides to dig a little deeper and asks if there's any girl he's particularly close with. The first person that pops into his head, Sophie. He's like, yeah, she's different from the other girls. And before you get excited, he immediately explains she's an excellent swordswoman and the only other first year who can produce flames. Real romantic stuff there, buddy. But actually, Rowan's been getting closer to her after learning about her backstory, and it's kind of sad. Turns out Sophie's the illegitimate child of some big-shot noble family, and her dad only enrolled her in the union for political clout. So, she's been under massive pressure since birth. Our boy sees her as this dear friend he can learn from, which is sweet, but also very I have zero game of him. Then there's Lucas, their third musketeer. Rand's got mad respect for this guy's physical strength, and admits there's a lot he can learn from him. But then, and I'm dying at this, Rand drops his personal theory about Lucas. He thinks the dude trains so much that his brain is literally filled with muscle, which is why he hates studying. Like, Rand has this whole mental diagram of Lucas's brain being just pure muscle tissue, where the grey matter should be. It's diabolical, but probably accurate. As a good friend, Rowan's been tutoring this blockhead just to make sure he doesn't fail first year again. That's what good people do, apparently. Professor Daphne is sitting there a little creeped out by this analysis, but she's accepted that geniuses just think differently. To his therapy session with Daphne, Rowan heads over to Arthur's office to talk about his constitution problem. And look, it's hard to feel sorry for this kid. He's got peerless magical talent, but his physical stats are mid. Rowan's insistent because he wants to wield much more powerful magic, and he's got his reasons. Arthur breaks down the options: magic tools that amplify mana, or items that store powerful spells. Both sound great in theory. They're not exactly sitting on Amazon Prime. If they were easy to get, everyone would be a mage. The magic tools you can buy are either single-use garbage, or so poorly made they're useless for the kind of magic Rowan's trying to unlock. The other option, elixir. These bad boys can recover mana, heal illnesses, increase your mana pool, and basically give you a stat boost in every way. They come in all shapes and sizes, and they're all extremely rare. And even if Rowan somehow got his hands on one, there's no guarantee it would actually help him. But hey, he's still young, so it's too early to give up hope. Then Arthur does something wild. He takes off his necklace and hands it over to Rowan. Inside the locket is one of these rare elixirs. White pill he got from the governor, as a reward for some past achievement. He's basically like, maybe fate wanted me to give this to my most talented student. Naturally, Rowan's hesitant to accept it, but the dean assures him it's cool, since he can't use it himself anyway. So Rowan takes the pill and just swallows it dry. No water, nothing. Immediately, he feels it dissolving inside him, and he's floating in this sea of energy. As the elixir spreads through his body, he's getting close to some kind of breakthrough, feeling like he's about to unlock Super Saiyan or something. But then, bam, reality hits him like a truck, and he's back in the dean's office, sitting in his chair like nothing happened. On Rowan's extremely disappointed face, Arthur can tell the pill was a complete dud. Rowan confirms it. The thing did absolutely nothing. Arthur wasn't expecting it to be a miracle cure, but the total lack of improvement is still pretty depressing. Our boy Rowan, he already knew this was probably going to happen instead of wasting more time trying to fix his constitution. He's decided on a new plan. He's going to completely reinvent magic itself. He'll take apart magic formulas, masterman of manipulation, to create his own custom branch of magic perfectly suited to him. Honestly, if you can't change your body, just rewrite reality. That's big brain energy right there. At least now he can focus on one solution instead of chasing multiple dead ends. Fast forward 6 months. Today's a big day, the final exam for the first-year Magic Studies course. Rowan's standing before the panelists, Arthur and Director Lazarus, and just casually produces 2 small fireballs in his hands. No words, no incantation, nothing. 2 old guys are clearly impressed and captivated by this masterful display. Then Rowan cranks it up, and makes those small flames rage, growing them way larger. They've seen it before, but watching Rowan handle mana directly never gets old. It's an incredible talent. At this rate, he might start combining different branches of magic. But even though everyone's praising him, Rowan's over here worried that his magic is too weak to be useful in the Union. Arthur has to reassure him. Bro, casting spells without incantation already puts you on par with a 4th-class mage. You're officially a Heil mage. No one can dispute that. He tells Rowan to stop worrying about destructive power and focus on his strengths. To keep going down this unique path he's carved out for himself. The Dean then challenges him to analyze and recreate spells up to the 4th class, based purely on his own understanding, and to make it easier, he's getting free access to ancient texts in the library. About his constitutional issues, though, they decide to keep that information on the down low, since it's just the 3 of them in the room. The Dean and Director decide to form a Mages Pack to keep it secret. They take each other's hands and start chanting this strange hymn together in perfect unison. Meanwhile, Rowan's just standing there, watching these 2 old dudes do their weird old man ritual in the middle of his exam, completely clueless about what's happening. The full year passes, and now Rowan and the squad have entered their 3rd year at Union Academy. Today, Professor Diego calls an urgent faculty meeting. And while this is technically his call to make, he felt it was important enough to share with everyone. He drops the bomb. From now on, the school will no longer teach Rowan any movement techniques, martial arts, or swordsmanship that involve using mana. Everyone's immediately concerned and curious why this sudden announcement is happening. Diego explains what they all know. Rowan has every intention of joining the Union, and now that he's a 3rd year, it's better for him to avoid high-rises combat courses. Basically, Diego is saying Rowan needs to focus entirely on magic. It's what he needs and wants to do. Arthur gets it. Rowan's the kind of talent you'd want to keep selfishly for yourself, but letting him go for his future is the best thing Diego can do, even if it's not easy. Sienna, who started teaching there a 1.5 years ago, talks about Rowan's current physical level. Diego's honest answer: the kid just needs to draw his sword to pass the first Union entrance test. He's that good, a rare natural talent. His overall destructive power is still a bit lacking, but that can improve with time since they're already talking power levels. Daphne turns to the Dean and asks how strong Rowan has become as a mage. After a brief, thoughtful silence, Arthur drops the mic. There's nothing more I can possibly teach that child. Everyone is surprised to hear that Rowan's already achieved the level where he can casually throw around 1st and 2nd class magic. But the real kicker, Soot, is that he is now reverse engineering 3rd class spells for fun. He treats complex magical formulas like toddler puzzles, and he's only a 3rd year student. To make it worse for everyone else, now that puberty hit him like a truck, the ladies are absolutely feral over this golden boy. A bro could steal anyone's girl without even lifting a finger, so the author had to nerf him by making him only care about books. Otherwise, this would have turned into a herm anime real quick. After another boring lecture wraps up, Professor Arthur pulls Rowan aside to tell him about this magic scholarship tournament that's happening. Naturally, their homegrown genius is the perfect representative. Rowan's like, wait, what tournament? Despite being here for 3 years, this event used to happen so mages could share ideas, but it died out as magic became irrelevant. But now it's back, and get this, it's all because of Rowan. The Dean drops this bombshell casually, and our boy's genuinely shocked. Here's what went down. At Popper's end, Rowan's reputation finally reached Schwaren, the autonomous kingdom and home to the Magic Tower, basically the Harvard of wizardry. The Tower Master is a duke, and they're completely isolated from everyone. Professor Arthur actually trained there until he became a Heil 3rd Arse mage. Since he knows how those mages think, he explains they're driven by pure curiosity. Those magic fanatics heard rumours about a 4th class mage at Union Academy. And while everyone's throwing that title around, Rowan's still humble about it. This whole event is basically an academic conference to verify if he's legit. Schwart wants to debate their golden boy and see if he's really about that life. Now, Rowan could just pass on this, but once he hears the grand prize, refusing becomes impossible. The Union's offering a valuable elixir. Even after that massive disappointment last year, when that white pill did jack, the possibility of getting an elixir is still tempting as hell. There's one concern. Schwaren might know about his constitution problem, but the Dean assures him there's no way. This is about interpreting magic formulas, and the elixir goes to whoever shows the most mastery. Basically, Rowan could win an elixir just by arguing about magic theory. The Dean promises he'll get it as long as he wins. With stakes that big, how could our boy say no? A few days later, the big day arrives. Schwarin rolls up with an entire battalion of cloaked mages, looking all mysterious and intimidating. The Union side, just Rowan and his professors, talk about an imbalance. Christopher welcomes the visitors politely when one mage Bert lowers his hood and calls the professor his senior. I'm sorry, but imagine being a powerful mage named Bert. Meanwhile, Rowan's sizing up the competition. Spawn's lineup is older than him. They're all packing serious manner. They're supposedly students hoping to learn from a success story, except the Union made it clear they only had Rowan as a participant, yet sent 3 students older than him. These petty mages never change. All trying to flex when Arthur presents Rowan as their sole representative. Bert pretends to be shocked like, oh my, just one student, give me a break. While the adults exchange fake pleasantries, the competitors watch each other silently. Rowan feels one Schwarn student's intense gaze, so he just gives the guy a friendly smile. The dude gets flustered, probably because Rowan's too pretty, and quickly looks away. After a sportsmanlike handshake, the conference is set to begin in the competition hall that afternoon. Hours later, spectators fill the hall. Some junior students worry their senior Ran will face 3 people by himself and might get hurt. Then the girls start screaming their support, so loud they almost shatter Lucas's eardrums. He's like, "Can y'all chill?" and points out, "This is just a debate, not a death match." But the girls argue debates can be just as dangerous. If senior Rowan gets hurt by harsh words, I'm dying at this logic. Lucas is shocked these junior girls even know who he is. But honestly, he's always glued to Rowan's side. Beside him sits Sophie. They both came to watch their friend dominate using only words. Professor Daphnes walks up to announce the official start. She declares the beginning of the scholarly exchange, and those junior girls raise a cloth banner with Rowan's name on it. Hilariously inappropriate for a scholarly debate, like they're at a sports game instead of an academic conference. Finally, our star Rowan walks in along with the 3 Schwerin boys. Professor Daphne explains the procedure. Each representative takes turns presenting a topic, writing spell formulas, and then moving to Q&A. The first debater is Ali Marco from Schwanchen going up against Rowan in round 1. Since Rowan got priority to pick the first topic, he chose carefully. He picked a subject that was very near and dear to his own heart, a topic he's probably obsessed over for countless hours. He chose telekinesis for the first round. The topic that our boy suggested surprised these guys because in these academic showdowns, the opening move is usually flexing your hardest spells. You know, showing off your faction's biggest achievements to set the tone. But what our boy suggested is literally the basic class 1 spell that beginners learn on day 1. All of these Schwarn mages immediately think it's a joke. Like, did we really travel all this way just to talk about baby's first spell? They're looking around confused, wondering if the rumours about this kid were completely exaggerated. Meanwhile, Arthur and director Lazarus are just sitting there in silence, like they know something these fools don't. Then this dude, Ali Marco, steps up, all high and mighty, saying Rowan's topic is beneath them and not worthy of this honoured forum. And Rowan hits him with the, "Oh, so you're mocking Schwan?" He explains that even something as basic as telekinesis has deep complexities worth discussing. Seriously, but Ali's not having it, saying diving deep into such a simple spell would be a waste of everyone's time. Rowan drops the philosopher bomb, but aren't mages supposed to devote time to exploring truth, no matter how small? And honestly, he cooked him with that one. Ali Marco, running out of patience and excuses, finally agrees to debate telekinesis. Being the polite genius he is, Rowan asks Ali what topic he had prepared since he doesn't want to be rude about the format. And this is where Ali severely underestimates our boy. He smugly proposes debating the fireball spell instead. Dick condescendingly explaining that it might be difficult for someone Rowan's age, but he's cool with an easy opponent. Arthur immediately clocks what's happening. Charwin must have heard about Rowan's fireball abilities and is trying to trap him. But plot twist, Rowan throws a curveball at everyone. He's like, you know what? Let's do both, telekinesis and fireball together. As a package deal, because why just talk about spells when you can combine them on the spot and blow everyone's minds? Then our boy casually picks up a piece of chalk with his mind. No chant, no hand gestures, nothing, and starts writing his formula on the board. Almo Marco is shook. This kid just no-chanted cast like it was nothing. Not wanting to be completely outdone, he also uses telekinesis to write his arguments, but he has to continuously chant the whole time just to maintain the spell. The difference in skill is already embarrassing. The Schwerin mages are squinting at the board, trying to figure out what Rowan's writing. Realizing this absolute madman might be trying to create a new spell by combining two different established spells on the spot. Surely not. Right. When it's time to explain their work, Aldi goes first. He writes out the complete separate formulas for telekinesis and fireball, the standardized versions established by great wizards with no room for recombination. Now it's Rowan's turn, and he steps up to the podium gathering his thoughts, explaining how telekinesis is basic enough that anyone with a little mana can do it. And originally he was just going to argue that people misuse it by relying too much on raw magical power. But thanks to Ali's interesting suggestion from earlier, he got inspired to try something more exciting, combining two established spells. He points to his board, showing the rewritten formulas. The first part is about controlling an existing fireball using telekinesis. Cool, but not world-shattering. But the second version that needs a demonstration. The chalk he's been manipulating starts spinning faster and faster until it generates a spark of flame. In just a few minutes, the boy had formulated a method to transform an object controlled by telekinesis into a literal fireball. He deconstructed the very essence of magic itself. Just for fun, the Schwan mages are having a collective meltdown. This single demonstration is challenging everything they've ever been taught about magic. For anyone unfamiliar with Rowan's abilities, the complete shock must be disorienting. Thankfully, the Union Academy faculty have gotten used to their resident genius breaking reality on a regular Tuesday. While still spinning the flaming chalk, Rowan continues lecturing about high concepts related to these supposedly basic spells. None of the Schwerin seniors can keep up, and Ali Marcoman is going through an existential crisis in real time, realizing he foolishly challenged a deity. After finishing his master class and making people feel intellectually inadequate, Rowan genuinely asks Ali if he has anything to add or if he could correct him if he missed something. And here's what's worse, Rowan is being completely sincere. He actually wants to learn more. But Ali can't replicate the feat, understand a single thing, and is about to be humiliated by magic incarnate disguised as a child. The pressure is closing in. Time's running out, and Ali can't handle it anymore. He suddenly coughs. Blood starts pouring from his nose, and he just collapses. The guy literally got knocked out by words. Even Rowan didn't see that coming. They rush Ali to the infirmary. And just like that, Rowan continues his undefeated streak, winning the coveted elixir with facts and logic. Bert the mage hands over the prize, thanking Rowan for the show despite their loss. He recommends Rowan wait before drinking the elixir, though consuming it too young can cause side effects. He should wait until around graduation, which is still 2 years away. That we finished watching mages get their souls destroyed, let's check in on some side characters. This is Rita, a third-year student at Union Academy, and she's been secretly in love with Rowan for 3 entire years. She knows there isn't a single student who doesn't like him. But the guy receives countless confessions, and over half the new students applied to the academy just to follow him. Rita knows she probably doesn't even register on his radar. For years, she's been content just watching and loving him from a distance. But today she decided to be brave. Last day of 3rd year, this is it. She gathers her courage, overcomes her fear, and confesses. Unfortunately, her heartfelt confession gets met with a very polite, very apologetic rejection, and then Rowan drops some heavy stuff for him. Love is about holding someone who has already left this world close to his heart. Nothing more. Rita never knew this boy carried such a bleak, sorrowful view of love. He asks if what she's feeling is truly love. He explains that people in love show signs like mental illness, joy, ecstasy, compassion, longing, fear, doubt, jealousy, and anger. He bets she doesn't feel that level of passion for him, and before anyone gets mad, invalidating her feelings, maybe she feels something. Maybe it's his looks or status that made her nervous or excited. But is that really love, or is it just admiration? All he's asking is for Rita to look into her own heart. If she still believes it's love, he's open to talking more, because Rowan is always open to constructive conversations. Man has mastered the art of letting people down intensely. Rita felt like she got hit over the head with clarity. So this is Rita. Today she was rejected by the boy she'd been in love with for 3 years, and as painful and sobering as that was, she has no regrets. Confessing your feelings to someone you like is brave and meaningful. Rita's one-sided love ended on her 3rd year's last day. And honestly, she's never felt better. So the scene kicks off with Daphne telling the class, "Yo, we've got Director Lazarus from administration here to drop some knowledge on you guys," and everyone starts clapping like good little students. Baldy gets to the stage, delivers his speech, and then goes, "All right, that's it for today, but if you all have questions, hit me with them." Immediately, some kid's hand rockets up asking the real question. Everyone wants to know, bro, every year thousands of people take the entrance exam. Why is the union always crying about being short-staffed? The teacher's like, look, not just anyone can waltz into the union. This place is elite as hell. Did you make it in? Fame, money, respect. The whole damn package is yours. The student raises their hand with the important follow-up. Okay. But what about the salary and benefits, though? And the teacher drops the bomb. The pay is good enough that you literally only need to focus on your missions. This is the most privileged job in the entire kingdom. The students are losing their minds. Then he hits them with another one. Every union member is directly connected to His Majesty himself, regardless of rank, because they all follow the king's will. Everyone's sitting there like, holy shit! Then this one kid raises his hand with an actually smart question. He's like, all right, look, you only recruit crazy talented people, but can we actually get strong by joining? Because I followed my teacher's advice, graduated top of my class, focused purely on magic, and I'm still not strong enough. The teacher is actually impressed. Someone thought about what happens after joining and tells him, hell yeah, you can definitely become strong here, which gets the boy all fired up and ready to grind even harder at His Majesty's. Cut to our boy Rowan, buried in a mountain of books, remembering when Sienna told him his ability was similar to ancient elves. While he's digging through all this dusty old text, he finds out that their powers were all about communing with spirits instead of using mana directly. Like, instead of controlling wind themselves, they just summon a wind spirit to do it for them. They literally controlled the spirits of the elements. Our boy can't understand one thing. How the hell did they lose all their powers overnight? He discovers that back in the age of the World Tree, there were elves and dark elves representing the whole good versus evil thing. But after the World Tree got destroyed, boom, no more powers. Even more bizarre, the world kept getting separated and merged across different timelines until humans took over and elves became basically endangered. Rowan's sitting there looking depressed because there aren't any clues about his specific powers in this whole story. He's now certain that the flow he's been seeing is mana, not spirits. So, our boy went to Arthur with his questions and the old man is confused. Dark magic? What are you talking about? Rowan says how he went through many books, but barely anything was written about it. The old man explains that ever since the Grave Group started messing with dark magic, it became public enemy number 1 for the Union. Rowan's looking worried and tells him he only saw Rita's magic technique. It looks like some ancient language, but he's not sure if it does the same thing. The old man points out the real difference is in the mana itself. Rowan's like, oh damn, yeah, that makes sense. Arthur explains that while Rowan can't see his own mana yet, those bastards from using dark mana are using dark mana. That's when it clicks for Rowan. The mana he saw earlier was dark mana. He asks what dark mana even is, and the old man drops this heavy-ass explanation. If regular mana makes up everything in the world, dark mana corrupts it and makes the world evil. He explains that the demon world is literally made of dark mana. Demons use it like battery power, and these Grave Group bastards are basically using the same demonic energy. He tells Rowan that sometimes he's noticed cloudy mana hanging around him. Teacher explains that dark emotions can turn your mana dark. Rowan's like, so, what's the end game for these dark magic groups anyway? And the teacher just deadpan says they want to destroy the world because obviously that's villain, playbook 101. Forward a few months and someone's asking Rowan if he's about to head to some salon. He says he's good and they're like, we know you're good better than literally anyone else, actually. Random dude standing there looking confused while Rowan's just watching 2 people bickering like actual toddlers. The girl tells him to come over whenever he's ready. As Rowan waves them off, he's thinking, these 2 idiots are actually pretty good together. As he walks into his room, he's thinking about how time flew by way too damn fast, like someone hit the fast-forward button on his life. Inside a box, there's this red potion, the elixir he was told to chug right before graduation. Meanwhile, Lucas and Sophie are talking among themselves about how their family members are going to be at the ceremony. Lucas is sure that his dad's definitely going to embarrass the hell out of him with some cringe speech at the ceremony. Meanwhile, Sophie is stressing about looking perfect, so she doesn't shame her family in front of everyone. On the other hand, our boy is feeling a little bit sad since he doesn't have a family to embarrass him, but then he quickly gets rid of these depressing thoughts because these 2 idiots are his family. Now the family he's got to protect, no matter what. Them, even if they're complete dumbasses sometimes. That's something Pauline's mother taught him before she died found family. it's different. Walking around his room, he decides to drink the potion, and as he does, something within him changes immediately. He can see Mana way clearer than before. Man just unlocked the HD vision upgrade, then he notices the egg. Years have passed and this thing is still, the same cryptic, just sitting there mocking him. He grabs the stone and channels pure mana into it. Thanks to the potion, he can see way more details in the mana flow than ever before. At this point, he thinks he can actually crack the seal himself. Finally going to figure out what this mystery egg is about. After years of blue balling, he whips up a magic circle and focuses on the egg. His eyes go wide, the egg starts floating in midair, all dramatic like releasing this insane amount of magic. He's completely stunned, staring at whatever the hell is hatching inside, probably thinking, please don't be a chicken, please don't be a chicken. And what do you know? It was not a chicken from the egg that popped out, nor was it some majestic phoenix. Nah, it's this black bird with yellow hair. Our boy's squinting at this thing like, bro, is this an owl? Immediately, this bird takes personal offense, puffing up all angry like, how dare you? He's sitting there thinking maybe it's some rare mystical species or whatever. But then this emo bird just snuggles right up to him and he's like, all right, you're actually adorable. You can stay. Oh, and fun fact, the second this owl hatched, it just yiked all the mana in the entire area. So what does our genius protagonist name this potentially world-ending creature? Owl. That's it. Just owl. Shakespeare is rolling in his grave. Meanwhile, over with Oscar, this man cannot believe his absolute disaster of a son is actually graduating. Like he's genuinely shocked, but then his thoughts drift to our boy Rowan, and he's getting all sentimental, thinking about how his idiot son only even made it to the academy because of Rowan. Now that graduation's here, Rowan's going to need a guardian, and Oscar is genuinely worried about what happens next. But then he notices something weird going down. The teachers are huddled up, arguing, and there's this lady going off about how she's been like family to Rowan for the past 5 years, and they have this strong bond. Meanwhile, some other professor is butting in, digging about how Rowan's going to revolutionize magic, and they'll be doing groundbreaking research together after graduation. Oscar's just standing there watching this unfold, like, hold up. Are these grown adults seriously fighting over custody of this kid? Like, when did Rowan become the most popular person at this school? Cut to the graduation ceremony starting up. They call Rowan to the stage, and he walks up with this confident-ass smile. Immediately, the students start whispering. Wait, did he get top of the class just because he's hot? What noble family is backing this guy? See, they'd heard rumours that some illegitimate child from a big noble house was graduating today, and they're all assuming it's our boy. Then, Rowan grabs the mic and absolutely shatters their assumptions. He starts telling his backstory, how he used to beg in the streets. He was literally about to be sacrificed to some dark cult before the Union had to swoop in and rescue him from becoming a ritual snack. After that, he joined the school, learned magic, made actual friends, decided his entire life mission would be protecting people. He's giving this whole heartfelt speech, thanking everyone who helped him become the righteous hero he is today. And his classmates are straight up tearing up. His teachers are nodding like proud parents, thinking, yeah, that's my boy right there. Later, they're walking through town, and his homie asks if he's taking the Union entrance exam after the ceremony. Rowan's like, yeah, that's been the plan all along. Lucas mentions his dad's looking for him, but then Rowan notices Sophie looking sad as hell. He asks if she's okay, and she admits she's nervous because she completely botched her speech in front of the crowd earlier and is low-key spiraling. Ronan, being the wholesome protagonist he is, puts a hand on her shoulder and goes, don't worry, we'll all get into the Union together and show them what you're worth. She's blushing and nodding, feeling all motivated now. They arrive at the Union, and the place is absolutely packed. Ronan walks up to the register and introduces himself as a Union School graduate. Immediately, people start side-eyeing him. Wait, isn't the minimum age for this exam 15? How young is this kid? The registrar checks his info and goes, oh damn, you're the top graduate from Union School, and confirms his registration, handing him a ticket to the testing area. People in line behind him start murmuring, okay, maybe this kid's different. I heard he can actually use magic without exploding. Ronan meets back up with Lucas and Sophie, and they explain the first round. You just have to demonstrate your skills in front of a supervisor. Ronan gives them a confident smile and says, just do what you always do and let's meet up after we pass. They're all hyped when the announcer calls out. Next candidate, Union School, top graduate Ronan. Our boy walks into testing area 1, and suddenly this massive golem just materializes in front of him and charges straight at him like it's got a personal vendetta. The test begins, and Rowan casually raises his hand. Blue mana starts swirling around it, and everyone watching is absolutely gawking, because apparently this level of mana control is not normal for a kid his age. Here's what our boy did. He analysed the golem's entire mana structure in a few seconds. Once he's got that info locked down, manipulating and changing it becomes child's play. So, what does he do? He initializes the golem's self-destruct sequence, straight up tells it to delete itself. In the next second, this golem starts melting like a chocolate cake, someone left in the sun. It's just dripping and dissolving until only its core is left floating in the air. Then the core just drops to the floor. And with that, the test was over. And for a second, no one can believe what just happened. Even though he just saw what our boy did, the examiner still couldn't believe it. He'd assumed Rowan was like every other basic student, who could throw some ice shards and fireballs, maybe a lightning bolt if they were feeling fancy. But nah, Rowan just casually pulled out some god-tier spellwork that had the entire crowd absolutely losing their mind. Everyone's whispering like, "Yo, did you see that? What kind of broken magic was that?" Lucas comes sprinting over and nearly tackles him with a bear hug, hyped out of his mind, congratulating him for passing. Then he gestures at the other examinees and goes, "Bro, look at them. They're shook. You just went full sweatlord in round 1. What are the rest of us supposed to do? Uninstall and go home." Lucas is cackling, then puffs out his chest and announces, "Too bad for everyone going after you, 'cause the great Lucas Timane hasn't even had his turn yet." The vibe was fun and hype, but then Rowan notices Sophie looking worried as hell, so he calls out to her, trying to gas her up. "Yo, Sophie, looking forward to your performance. Let's all get into the union together." She gives him this tiny smile and thanks him, but you can tell she's still nervous as hell. The examiner calls her name next, and Sophie's literally trembling as she walks up. You can see the fear radiating off her. Lucas tries to encourage her. "Stay calm, you got this." She turns back, gives them a smile and heads to the stage. As she steps up, the golem spawns in, and she draws her sword. Know-it-all in the crowd immediately starts commentating. "Oh, she's using the PBLE sword technique." Then he squints and goes, "Wait, her stance is trash though." The girl next to him asks how he even knows that, and this dude's like, "Trained with the PBLE family before, so I know their style." He explains it's supposed to be this insanely difficult technique with continuous strikes that flow like an illusion, super hard to counter, but the key is depth. The blade work needs weight and precision. Looking at her stance, there's no depth whatsoever. The girl's worried now, asking what Sophie should do, and this bastard just casually says, "I mean, at least she should have learned the basics before trying to show off in public." But Sophie didn't give a damn about rules or theory. She gripped her sword and charged straight at the golem. 1 second it was there, and the next it was gone, like my motivation. The know-it-all and his friend jaws on the floor. But Rowan Man's just standing there with this satisfied smirk like, "Yeah, that's my girl." As the golem crumbles to dust, Sophie standing there in shock that she actually pulled it off that fast. The examiner, buffering, stammers out that she passed and can grab her certification stamp. The crowd's going absolutely feral. Did she really just slice through a golem like it was made of paper? What the hell was that speed? Meanwhile, Lucas and Rowan are grinning ear to ear, knowing damn well she didn't even show half her arsenal, though they both noted she hit the golem with 6 consecutive strikes. When she comes back, they both congratulate her. Lucas, being Lucas, can't help but roast her a bit. "You looked a little rusty up there. Fright get to you." Then he cracks his knuckles and announces, "All right, my turn. Just watch and learn, children." He swaggers onto the stage, turns back with this cocky-ass grin, and goes, "This is just a warm-up for me." The second the golem materializes, Blitz launches himself like a missile and splits the thing clean in half with 1 strike, destroying its core instantly. He's standing there admiring his handiwork like, "Damn, did I go too hard? My bad." Meanwhile, the examiner is having a full mental breakdown because that's the 3rd person today who one-shot the golem. Like, bro, what is this, a damn speedrun competition? Later that evening, they're chilling at Lucas's crib. Just tells Rowan to make himself at home and yell if he needs anything. Rowan thanks him for letting him crash there, and Lucas waves it off like it's nothing, then mentions dinner's ready, and he should freshen up first. At dinner, there are carrots, just carrots. Lucas's dad offers Rowan more, but he politely declines. Lucas immediately starts whining about the food and gets bonked on the head for being ungrateful. Rowan's just sitting there like, damn, this family dynamic is wholesome as hell. Then Oscar turns to Rowan and asks about the gifts. Our boy immediately starts thanking him, saying they were exactly what he needed. The conversation shifts to the exam results, and after hearing how they performed, Oscar's genuinely gone surprised. He knew Rowan was special, but he didn't expect to see that level of magic at an entrance exam. But now that he knows what the boy's capable of, man's hyped as hell about the second round. Cut to 1 week later, and it's test day again. 2 examiners are watching everything go down, complaining about how way too many people passed this time, so now they got to extend the whole exam. But out of everyone there, our boy and his crew immediately catch their eye. Meanwhile, Rowan's thinking how lucky he is that he didn't have to fight Lucas or Sophie. But then he's like, wait, who am I actually fighting? His eyes go wide when he spots someone familiar. It's that know-it-all dude from before, the one who was commentating on Sophie's sword moves. The guy walks up to Rowan and asks, have we met before? Rowan's like, yeah man, you were breaking down sword techniques during the first test. I was actually pretty impressed. I'd love to pick up some stuff from you. The guy doesn't remember him at all. He pulls out his sword and goes, well, since I'm a graduate now, let me teach you some lessons, kid. They square up across from each other and the examiner signals the fight to start. The fight kicks off and our boy decides to orphan. He uses his telekinesis to snatch control of the guy's sword, and for a second, this dude doesn't even realize what's happening. Rowan's just standing there all chill while this guy is losing it. Being absolutely confused and stammering, wait, hold on. But Rowan doesn't wait. He hits him with the magic again, and dude's sword starts floating above him like it's possessed. The examiner asks, would you like to continue? The guy can't believe some kid is toying with him like this. His ego is destroyed, so he confidently announces, I don't need a weapon to handle some arrogant boy. Rowan lifts one finger, and the guy immediately realizes he's screwed as he watches his own sword flying straight at him. Before he can even react, he gets taken out by his own weapon with Rowan just casually standing beside him. As the dude lies there on the floor, completely destroyed both mentally and physically. The examiner is having a whole crisis like, how is this kid even doing this? He declares Rowan the winner and tells him to get ready for the next match. Rowan, still kind of shocked at how easy that was, gives a polite smile and says, good match. A few days later, Rowan's reading his letter. It's final test day. While getting ready, he thinks about how all his hard work has brought him here. He's so close to getting into the Union, his dreams right there. Thinking back on his past fights, he realizes his attack patterns have gotten way too predictable. They haven't really changed much. He knows he's got to switch things up this time. He's always been counterattacking, letting opponents strike first, believing in turning the tables. Looking back at everything, he realizes he needs to learn new techniques and stop relying purely on instinct. After joining the Union, he has to level up. He can't keep doing the same thing forever. But right now, he needs to focus on the interview since that's the last obstacle. Then it hits him. Wait, where's my owl? Right as he's thinking about it, the owl comes flying at him out of nowhere. He gets all excited, relieved that the thing he was looking for finally showed up. They both seem genuinely hyped to see each other, and Rowan asks if the owl's celebrating with him. Ever since it hatched, this bird's been pulling disappearing acts, just vanishing randomly and popping back up when Rowan's alone. Is this some kind of technique? He holds the bird in his hand, thinking about how, whenever it disappears, you can't sense its mana or its presence at all. It's like the owl dips into another dimension and comes back. He's still confused about whether this is even a real owl or some mysterious creature he doesn't know about yet. He tells the bird, once I get into the Union, I'll figure out how to actually talk to you. The owl seems happy and flaps its wings. Just then, he senses someone coming. He turns and it's Sophie calling for him. Rowan turns to chat with her real quick, but while he's talking, the bird just vanishes again. Rowan shook. Sophie walks over and tells him it's time for the interview, so they should head out. The scene shifts to the Union building, where people are waiting for their turn. Rowan notices there aren't many people left and mentions it. Sophie tells him only 50 students got picked for interviews. She thanks him, saying there's so many familiar faces here because of him. He brushes it off, saying it's because she kept up with him. Then someone shows up who stuns everyone. It's Lucas, and he's acting weird because he's nervous as hell. He tries to play it cool like, nah, I'm pretty normal right now. But his face is screaming, I'm freaking out. Sophie hands him a handkerchief to wipe his sweat before the interview, or he'll look like a disaster. Rowan jokes, you're never nervous unless it's about talking to adults. Maybe it's 'cause of Deputy Director Oscar. Then some student walks out looking all defeated, shoulders slumped, and Rowan's like, Didn't he just go in? How's he already back out? Lucas tells him how some people come right back out like they gave up halfway through. Xiong and Rowan immediately roasts him, saying he'd know better since he went to school way longer than them. Lucas, annoyed, goes, "Yeah, thanks bro, that's really going to help my confidence." Rowan then asks, "Isn't this interview supposed to test our character?" Lucas playfully puts him in a headlock like, "Are you saying I don't have good character?" They both freeze when the examiner calls out, "Next up, Rowan, get ready." As Rowan stands in front of the gate, he notices it responds to people's manner. He thinks he'd like to check it out sometime, but not right now. When he walks into the room, there's nobody around. He wonders if maybe the interviewers aren't there yet, but then he hears a voice from behind, calling him, telling him to come over. He knows the voice and reaches another door. As it opens, he's absolutely stunned by what he sees inside. He feels this overwhelming amount of mana coming from the room. There's a woman who looks like an elf, her eyes covered, welcoming him inside with this mysterious energy. Now, this whole situation is way too confusing for our boy. For years, he'd imagined the leader of the Union would be some intimidating, battle-hardened warrior type. And instead, he gets this chill elf lady who's out here serving tea like they're at a book club meeting. The vibes are not matching the expectations at all. They are casually sipping the teas. Our boy's on high alert, because the amount of magic and mana radiating off this woman is insane. Like this is the peak power level he's been dreaming about his entire life. Then she speaks up all casual like the tea seems to suit your taste. He snaps out of his internal crisis and agrees, "Yeah, it's warm and refreshing. It tastes like it was harvested this morning." Then she just drops it on him. "It's because of your unique body constitution, the one that can't store mana." And before he can process that bomb, she hits him with another one. "You must have been lonely all this time. It must have felt hard to reach this level." Robert goes silent, like completely speechless, because honestly, he'd never really thought about it like that. His heart's always been full because of his loved ones. He never felt lonely, but she keeps going. "Despite your loneliness, you grew up and became such a strong person. And damn, this hits different. People have praised his skills before and acknowledged his hard work. Sure, but nobody's ever truly understood his past struggles like this. This is the first time someone's actually seen him, really seen the loneliness he went through. Those words of kindness hit so hard that tears just start flowing. He's wiping them away. They're all confused like, "Yo, why am I crying right now? Is it the mana she's emitting? Or what?" The governor tells him that even though his body is lacking, his heart is pure and honest. He's a kind and generous kid. Then she casually points at something and goes, "You're accompanied by your little strange friend." For a second, our boy is like, what is she talking about? But then he realizes, oh, so she can see Owl. Owl flew over to her immediately and got head pats and some praise from the elf mummy. It's clicking for him. She doesn't just know about his past. She knows his present too. This woman knows everything. He starts thinking about that vision he saw earlier and wonders if she knows about that as well. Finally, he works up the courage to ask, "The vision I saw earlier, was that the future?" He's genuinely worried about what he saw. She pauses for a moment, then drops some wisdom. There's no such thing as a fixed future. If he saw something from the future, there's a chance it might not happen. Everything depends on him and his will. He becomes what he believes in the future he creates. What he saw was just one possibility, not a guaranteed outcome. He just has to work hard to prevent that possibility from becoming reality. It's what humans have been doing for ages, and just like that, our boy finally understands the path he needs to take and how to work toward his future. The man's smiling with genuine happiness now, like he just unlocked the secret to life. Cut to the next day at Oscar's house, and this man had prepared a feast, but with carrots, naturally, because he loves carrots. He says he made them with extra effort, so they should celebrate properly. While they're eating, Sophie asks where they'll be assigned. Oscar replies that it's hard to say. The governor probably made arrangements during the interviews. He mentions that only 10 people passed, including the 3 of them, and they're the only 3 who graduated from the Union School. Aurore thinks there's a possibility the 3 might end up together, but Oscar's like, nah, that's pretty unlikely. But then he adds, though nobody knows what goes on in the mind of that mad man, so it's also possible. He switches topics and tells everyone how their relationship is about to change once they step outside. Inside the house, he's their fun-loving uncle. Outside, he's the deputy director and a union member, so they'll have to keep things strictly professional. Lucas says as long as he's getting paid, he doesn't care where he works. Sophie asks if he really hates the idea of working under his father that much. Lucas replies that it doesn't even matter, because they've been distant as father and son from the beginning anyway. Had Rowan smiles, thinking Lucas has grown a lot. The man's keeping his personal and business life separate like an actual adult. Now the scene shifts to the union administration entrance, where they're being checked by the guard who confirms their names. But recalls that he's visited the administration building before, but he was never treated with this kind of respect. Now he feels like his status is genuinely changed. As they walk forward, he wonders what they'll be doing here. When they reach inside, shocked by what they see, it's a blacksmith chamber filled with intense heat and glowing metals everywhere. Turns out this is called the Book and Sword of the Union. They need their own custom weapons crafted to suit them. They're introduced to Ulrich, and this guy is as grumpy as any other dwarf you'd meet. He doesn't waste time with pleasantries and immediately tells them to pick whatever weapon they like. Lucas immediately picks a long sword man, knows what he wants. Sophie's still thinking about her options, while Rowan's just searching around looking lost. The dwarf blacksmith notices him, but focuses on Lucas first. He tells Lucas to grip it confidently and swing. Lucas does a test swing and analyzes it, saying if they add more weight and sharpen the tip, it'll be way more destructive. They can also adjust the length so he can train with ease. Next, he calls Sophie over. She slashes the air with multiple rapid strikes, and he observes carefully like a coach. He tells her that for her style of swordsmanship, she lacks raw power, but her balance and stability are excellent and top-notch. Clearly, she's trained her lower body extremely well. Dwaps or mentions that now that she's in the Union, there's no need to restrict herself to just her sword style. She could use a shield with her sword as well. She says she'll think about it, but it doesn't even matter because the man had already made up his mind. He's making both a sword and a shield for her. Finally, he calls up Rowan, and seeing how this idiot still hasn't picked up anything, he asks Rowan if he's a mage. For a second, Ori's low-key annoyed like, bro, a mage and a blacksmith, that's not even a good combo. Whatever. He's professional about it, and tells Rowan he'll give it his best shot to make something decent for him. But then Rowan interrupts and hits him with, actually, I've got a pretty weird request. The boy starts explaining how he's not really into normal swords. Nah, he prefers controlling floating sword shards. For a second, Ulrich is like, what? To prove he's not just talking out of his ass. Rowan summons this glowing blue fragment that just hovers next to him. Then he drops the question, can the blacksmith fix his broken shards? The blacksmith just holds out his hand like, let me see what we're working with here. The moment he inspects the fragment, this man's whole expression changes. He recognizes it immediately. This isn't just some regular broken sword. This is a piece of a demonic sword infused with dark mana. He looks at Rowan like, you're one interesting kid. Then drops some knowledge. If they reforge this single broken sword correctly, they could turn it into 12 separate blades. Rowan's face absolutely lights up with excitement, probably already imagining himself looking cool as hell with 12 floating swords. The blacksmith immediately pumps the brakes on his hype, warning him that the reforging process is way harder than it sounds. He explains that each piece needs to hold the exact same amount of mana. One tiny mistake, and the whole artifact is destroyed forever. It is master-level work, not some beginner, so they'll need at least a 4th-class mage. Hearing that, Rowan looks at him for a moment and then goes, so, all we need is a 4th-class mage, right? So, our boy told him that he can do it. Now, blacksmith's sweating, wondering if this teenager is either arrogant as hell or actually has the skills to back up this insane claim. Robert just smiles reassuringly and promises he'll take full responsibility if anything goes wrong. How convinces the blacksmith to let him try. The man gestures for him to go ahead, but adds a nervous, please try not to be too loud, because he knows this is about to get wild. So, now our boy is all locked in. He's doing his thing, and this absolutely gorgeous blue mana aura just erupts around the floating shard. His fingers start doing this insane, precise dance, weaving these magical energy streams from his hands into the ancient metal. But the hard part was yet to come. He closes his eye and goes full-on Ultra Instinct. While he's in the zone, Rowan's remembering all the lessons Pauline dropped on him. He's combining her wisdom with all the crazy advanced stuff Director Lazarus showed him. In his mind's eye, he's seeing the energy inside this shard as like thousands of glowing branches. And he carefully starts pulling apart these magical strands. But then you see his face scrunch up a bit, because this is actually hard as hell, even for someone as cracked as him. Focusing everything on the real challenge here. Splitting the sword's mana into 12 perfectly equal pieces and keeping it all stable. With one final push, Roma just says, fuck it, and goes full power, creating this massive whirlpool of energy that explodes outward. The master blacksmith's jaw literally drops to the floor. This man is shook, staring at this display like his entire worldview just got deleted, thinking, what the actual this kid is doing? What now? These bright, sharp cracks of light start spreading across the shard surface as all that power splits the metal from the inside. The energy tornado finally calms down and there's Ralma just standing there, looking cool as hell, while 12 identical glowing sword shards are floating around him. The freshly made blades drift through the air all gracefully and land right in the blacksmith's hands. This man starts laughing like he can't believe what he's seeing. Turning these perfect shards over and over, same shape, same size, same mana levels. Literally, everything is flawless. Completely losing his mind that some 15-year-old kid just casually did what most master mages couldn't pull off if you gave them their whole lifetime to try. Cut to later, and it's already orientation day. Dan Baldi is going through the standard stuff about the Union's 7 divisions and how everyone gets sorted based on what they're good at. Then he hits them with the harsh truth. The world's brutal. Wearing the Union's name paints a target on your back. Even the regular people you're out here protecting will call you the kingdom's dogs when you're not around. But he tells them to push through it. Because at the end of the day, they're here to keep the peace and make the world less shitty. Up ahead to induction day, and the blacksmith hands Rowan this heavy-ass pouch with all 12 blades inside. Rowan's immediately pumped to try these bad boys out. He tells Lucas it's time to bounce. His friend looks like someone just kicked his puppy because he got stuck in his own dad's division. They show up at this massive, fancy hall where Creed division members are already going ham with training, swords clashing everywhere. A voice announces the new recruits just arrived. Rowan immediately clocks this one guy's badge, showing he's high-ranked as hell. That's a Duran, the division leader and an expert-level swordsman. After they do quick intros, Jidden just casually drops that he's bored out of his mind and wants to see what Rowan can do. And our boy and Lucas are like, wait, what? This isn't how these things go. But nah, Sudin doesn't care. He points to the side and tells Rowan that Oscar is going to be his opponent. And Oscar is all in on it because he's curious to see how much Rowan's telekinetic sword game has leveled up over the past 5 years. And Rowan too is now hyped to find out just how strong he has gotten in these 5 years. So he accepts the duel. Rowan's attitude immediately earns Oscar's respect, but he also reminds him to go all out because he too won't hold back. And while he was saying that, he pulls out this absolutely massive claymore. Rowan just calmly replies that magic is his whole thing, and suddenly 12 brand new mana-infused blades appear out of nowhere and start floating around him in a circle. Oscar notices the extra blades and is like, hold up, didn't you have less of these before? Rowan explains they were a welcome gift. And Oscar immediately recognizes the craftsmanship, asking what our boy named them. Ryan tells him they're called Seville, and Oscar's thinking to himself whether these tiny blades can actually live up to that fancy name. Ryan admits he's curious about their power too, since this is basically his first real test drive. Then Ron hits Oscar with a bold request. He wants the first move. Duran, who's watching from the sidelines, is impressed as hell by the audacity. Oscar realizes this isn't just some cocky rookie being arrogant. The kid's got an actual plan brewing, so they square up on opposite ends of the hall. Shot Ron with his floating blades, and Oscar with his giant sword. Then Oscar erupts with this intense crimson aura and basically warns Ron, don't you dare disrespect my family's fighting style with some half-assed imitation. Ryan thinks back to his 5 years of sparring with Lucas, knowing the pass-off family's claymore style inside and out from all that practice. But he also knows that Oscar is on a completely different level than his friend could ever reach. With that, the battle begins. He goes all in from the first second, using all 12 shards, but Oscar just casually swats them away. He gives Rowan some quick feedback, saying, the technique's rough but has potential, but even if it does, it's nowhere near enough to beat him. And as he says that, he charges straight at our boy, and Rowan has no idea how to stop him, so he quickly comes up with a crude plan. He knows that he can't stop that sword, so instead, he focuses on slowing down the sword's speed. Oscar's about to bring down another strike, when in the next second, he's completely frozen in place. Lucas and Eden are watching from the side, with Lucas pointing out that something invisible just locked his dad down. Rowan's back on his feet, while Oscar's struggling against the restraints. Turns out our boy used precise mana control to manipulate weight and friction to trap Oscar. Oscar looks at him with this impressed smile, saying, the kid learned some nice tricks. Warns him, parlor tricks won't cut it. The mana threads start cracking, and with one massive roar, Oscar just shatters those magical restraints like they're tissue paper. His claymore comes crashing down, but stops inches from Rowan, by all 12 of his blades interlocked together. Rowan pushes back with everything, realizing his new weapon's way more capable than he thought. But Oscar stops playing nice and unleashes this furious combo, pushing Rowan backward across the floor with each strike. Our boy knows his mana is still too weak to restrain Oscar for long, but at least for now, the situation isn't too bad because he can control his weapon. But the real problem is that there is nowhere to fall back to. He's losing his ground. He decided to go all offensive. He whips out a fireball and launches it at Oscar, and it all happens so fast that Oscar could barely block it. And in the end, it was his mustache that got the hit. Bro lost half of his mustache in that attack. His commander and colleagues didn't forget to make fun of him for that. Some even started straight up roasting him. But at the same time, they are impressed by our boy's skill. Then Eden calls our boy over, telling him to like the video and help Mamoru to make juicy content and activate that cheeky little bell.